A millionaire CEO rejected every rich woman in his circle until a humble food delivery girl walked into his life and changed everything. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments what city you are watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. He stood alone on the pier in the freezing rain, his suit soaked, his heart empty. The woman who had delivered food to his office months ago stood just feet away, crying as security held her back. And as she shouted his name, Lucas Caldwell finally realized everything he had built, every dollar he had earned, meant nothing without her. But to understand how the empire of Lucas Caldwell began to crumble under the weight of something as fragile as love, we have to go back to where it all began. Lucas Caldwell had everything. At least that's what people said when they looked at him. A $20 million penthouse overlooking Manhattan's skyline, a fleet of imported cars he barely drove, and an empire that stretched from Los Angeles to London. But if you asked Lucas, the silence that filled his home every night was louder than any city noise. He'd built his fortune brick by brick, deal by deal, never allowing himself the luxury of failure or emotion. His father had taught him early that feelings were distractions, that success belonged to the men who kept their hearts locked away. And Lucas had learned that lesson well. He'd worn it like armor. Every morning started the same. The distant hum of the city below, the whir of his coffee machine, and the reflection of a man who didn't smile back. His assistant, Lydia Jameson, always arrived before dawn with a tablet full of numbers, meetings, and names that blurred together. "You've got lunch with Gloria Hale today," she'd said one morning, not looking up from her schedule. "She insists it's about a partnership deal." Lucas had raised an eyebrow because he knew Gloria never talked business when it came to him. Gloria Hale was the daughter of an oil magnate, beautiful in a sharp, deliberate way, every move choreographed to draw attention. They had grown up in the same social circles, the kind that clinked champagne glasses and made promises behind marble walls. She'd always wanted more than friendship, and Lucas, out of courtesy, had entertained her company. But love? That was a word he didn't have in his vocabulary. At lunch that day, Gloria arrived dressed in white silk, the kind of outfit that turned heads in a room already designed for envy. "Lucas, darling," she greeted, air-kissing both cheeks as cameras from gossip sites subtly flickered in the corners. "You've been avoiding me." "I've been working," he said plainly, signaling the waiter. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that demanded to be heard. "You make it sound like that's an excuse. Don't you ever get tired of pretending business is your only companion?" Lucas didn't answer. He'd learned that silence was the best defense against expectation. But Gloria didn't take silence well. "You need someone beside you, Lucas," she said, leaning forward. "Someone who understands your world. The parties, the investors, the image. You can't keep pushing people away forever." He met her gaze then, eyes steady, voice level. "Maybe I'm not looking for someone who understands my world. Maybe I'm looking for someone who reminds me there's another one out there." For a moment, Gloria froze, her smile faltering. She reached for her champagne, forcing a laugh. "You and your riddles," she said, but there was irritation behind her tone. He didn't mean to hurt her. He just couldn't lie anymore. He left the restaurant that day. Reporters shouted questions, assuming a new romance was brewing. Lucas didn't care. What he didn't know was that his real story wouldn't begin in a five-star restaurant, but in a narrow alley behind his corporate headquarters, where a delivery scooter was parked under the rain. It happened 2 days later. Lydia was stuck in a meeting when lunch ran late, and Lucas, impatient, had ordered food from a small local place just around the corner, a place he didn't even know existed. 30 minutes later, a knock echoed through the glass doors of his office. He opened it himself, too distracted to call security, and there she was. Jasmine Porter stood drenched, helmet tucked under her arm, holding a brown paper bag that had begun to tear from the rain. "Order for Mr. Caldwell?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with exhaustion. Lucas nodded, slightly confused. No one ever saw him in person like this. Usually, deliveries went through 3 layers of staff before reaching his desk. But Jasmine didn't recognize him. She just wanted to finish her shift. Her eyes flicked over the marble floors and tall windows, the way people look at a world they don't belong in. "Thank you," he said, reaching for his wallet. She shook her head. Already paid online. Something about her composure struck him. There was no trace of flattery, no hint that she cared who he was. She turned to leave, but her hand slipped, and the rain-soaked bag tore open, spilling its contents across the floor. Lucas's instinct was to call someone to clean it, but instead he knelt down beside her. "It's fine," he said quickly. She froze, surprised. You don't have to. I want to," he interrupted. He didn't know why, but something about her quiet panic cut through him. Together, they gathered the scattered boxes, laughing awkwardly as soy sauce dripped onto his expensive shoes. "Guess I owe you another delivery fee," he said. Her lips curved into a tired smile. "No refunds on bad luck." And with that, she was gone, leaving behind a faint scent of rain and spice that lingered long after the elevator closed. That night. Lucas couldn't sleep. He told himself it was nothing, just a passing moment. But her voice echoed in his mind. No refunds on bad luck. There was something in the way she said it, like someone who'd learned to accept pain without complaint. He didn't realize it yet, but that simple encounter had cracked the walls he'd built for years. Days turned into weeks, but fate has a strange sense of timing. Lucas saw her again, this time at the lobby cafe near his office. She was behind the counter, tying her apron, her hair pulled into a messy bun. He ordered coffee he didn't even want, just to speak to her again. "Large black coffee?" she asked, not looking up. "Make it 2, he said. "One for you." She blinked, startled. "We're not really supposed to." "Then consider it a tip," he said with a faint smile. Reluctantly, she poured another cup and joined him at a corner table during her 5-minute break. "So," she said, "you're the guy from the EE office tower. You looked different without the suit." He chuckled. "Maybe the suit wears me." Her laugh was genuine, light, unfiltered, the kind of sound his penthouse never heard. They talked about simple things: food, the city, her second job delivering at night. She mentioned her mother's medical bills, her dream of opening a small diner someday. Lucas didn't know what to say. He'd signed million-dollar deals without hesitation. But this conversation, this small window into someone's real struggle, made him feel helpless. When her break ended, she stood to leave. "Thanks for the coffee," she said. "Thanks for reminding me what it's supposed to taste like," he replied. As she walked away, something inside him shifted. For the first time in years, Lucas didn't think about stock prices or competitors. He thought about her. Over the next few weeks, he found excuses to visit the cafe, sometimes to grab lunch, sometimes just to see her. Lydia noticed. "You've been unusually punctual for coffee breaks," she teased. Lucas shrugged. Maybe I'm just learning to enjoy life's smaller dividends. But not everyone was amused. Gloria Hale, who'd been following his public appearances, began to notice the absence of red carpet events and charity galas. When she called one evening, her tone was sharp. I saw you at some cheap cafe downtown, Lucas. Is that where you're spending your time now? He didn't rise to her bait. I'm meeting good people, Gloria. You should try it sometime. Her voice dropped an octave. You're risking your reputation for someone who brings you coffee. He hung up. That night, Lucas drove by Jasmine's neighborhood. It wasn't intentional, or maybe it was. The streets were narrow, lined with dim porch lights, and tired. Houses that told stories of struggle and endurance. He saw her scooter parked outside a small, peeling duplex. She was helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries inside. No cameras, no audience, just quiet kindness. The next morning, he surprised her at the cafe. "You're off early," she said, confused to see him there before sunrise. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Thought I'd get some breakfast." "You're in a suit." "Nobody eats pancakes in a suit." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'll make an exception." They laughed, and the morning light softened everything. The city noise, the distance between their worlds. Lucas didn't know what love felt like, but if it was anything like peace, this was it. Still, the higher you climb, the more dangerous. The fall. Lydia warned him discreetly that the board was whispering, that Tyler Blake, his rival, was spreading rumors about an inappropriate relationship, threatening investor confidence. Lucas dismissed it at first, but when a photo of him and Jasmine having coffee surfaced online, the storm began. That same night, his father called. "I taught you better than this," William Caldwell said coldly. "You can't jeopardize the company over some girl." "She's not some girl, Dad." "Then what is she, Lucas? Your charity project?" The words stung more than Lucas cared to admit. "She's someone who makes me feel human." There was a long silence on the other end. Then his father said, "If you keep this up, don't expect my name to protect you when this crashes down." Lucas hung up without responding. He stared out his penthouse window, the city lights reflecting off the glass like ghosts of everything he'd built. And for the first time in his adult life, he didn't care about legacy. He cared about her. The next day, he walked into the cafe during rush hour. Jasmine looked up, startled, as customers whispered around them. "Lucas, what are you doing here?" "Having breakfast," he said simply. "With you." Her hands trembled. "You shouldn't. People are talking." "Let them talk," he said softly. "I've spent my whole life listening to people who didn't matter. I'm done." She stared at him, torn between disbelief and hope. "Why me?" he smiled faintly. "Because you never looked at me like a wallet." And in that small cafe, with coffee steam rising between them, something pure began. But outside, a different kind of storm was brewing, one that would soon test both their worlds in ways neither of them could have imagined. The morning after that cafe scene, the city seemed louder, harsher, like every honking car and buzzing phone was reminding Lucas Caldwell that peace was a luxury he could never truly afford. His name was trending online, but not for a merger or acquisition, no. This time it was about the mystery girl from the cafe. Someone had snapped a photo, and the caption read, "Millionaire CEO caught slumming it with delivery girl." It went viral within hours. He should have cared, should have called his PR team, but he didn't. He just stared at the image, the way Jasmine was laughing, her head tilted back, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Joy. Real, unfiltered joy. At the office, the air was sharp with gossip. Lydia Jameson followed him into the boardroom, shutting the glass door behind her. "Lucas," she said quietly, "you need to get ahead of this. Tyler Blake's people are circulating the photo. He's claiming it's a publicity stunt to distract from his partnership offer you rejected." Lucas leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "Let him talk." "Let him talk?" "Lucas, you have investors calling me. They think you've lost focus." He turned to the window, hands in his pockets. "Maybe I finally found it." Lydia blinked, taken aback. She'd known him for a decade, seen him ruthless in negotiation, cold in rejection. But this was new. There was something human in his voice. "You really like her," she said softly. He didn't deny it. "She makes the world quiet. Then you'd better prepare for the noise that's coming." Outside, the company's media team was in chaos. Reporters camped in the lobby, gossip blogs wanted interviews, and Tyler Blake had just posted a thinly veiled jab about CEOs losing touch with class. Lucas didn't respond publicly, but inside he was boiling. Tyler had always been jealous. His rival firm never matched Caldwell Industries' success. But Lucas knew that any public defense would only drag Jasmine into the spotlight, and that was the last thing he wanted. Meanwhile, Jasmine had her own storm to face. She'd just finished a double shift when her manager at the cafe pulled her aside. "Jazz, I don't know what's going on with you and that rich guy, but people are talking. Customers, reporters, this place can't handle that kind of attention." Her stomach dropped. "Are you firing me?" "I'm asking you to lay low for a bit. Take a week off," she nodded, swallowing the sting. "Yeah, I get it." That night, she sat in her tiny kitchen with her mom, Gina, who was flipping through a tabloid with Lucas's face plastered across it. "Honey, you know I love you," Gina said gently. "But men like that, they live in another world. You don't want to get hurt." Jasmine smiled faintly. "It's not like that, Mom. He's kind. Kind is good. But kind doesn't pay for bodyguards when the press starts camping outside." Jasmine laughed, though it came out tired. "You sound like him." Gina raised an eyebrow. "Then maybe he's smart." The next day, Lucas texted her for the first time since the photo leaked. "Are you okay?" She hesitated, fingers hovering over her phone. "I'm fine. Just a little chaos." "I can fix it," he replied. "Please don't," she typed back. "If you try to fix it, it'll only get worse." There was a long pause before his next message appeared. "Then, let me see you. Just somewhere quiet." She thought about it all afternoon before finally agreeing. That evening, she met him at the edge of Central Park, where the city's noise faded into the rustle of leaves. He was dressed simply this time, no tie, no entourage. "You look human," she teased. He smiled. "That's the goal." They walked, for a while, saying little. Finally, she broke the silence. "Your world scares me, Lucas. All those cameras, people judging. It scares me too," he admitted. "That's why I've been hiding in it." She stopped, studying him. "Then why risk everything just to talk to me?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "Because for once, I'm not performing. With you, I'm just me." The words hung between them, fragile and real. She wanted to believe him. Part of her did. But part of her also knew stories like this didn't end well for girls like her. By the next morning, the whispers turned to headlines. "Caldwell Affair Threatens Stakeholder Confidence." "Anonymous Insider Claims CEO Neglecting Duties for Personal Relationship." Lydia tried to contain the fallout, but Tyler Blake had already planted stories across multiple outlets. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. Inside that room, men in suits sat around a polished oak table, murmuring like crows. "Lucas, we need to control this narrative," said one board member. "End it. Issue a statement. Apologize, if necessary." "Apologize for what?" Lucas asked, voice calm but cold. "For fraternizing beneath your status," another replied bluntly. "This isn't good optics." Lucas leaned forward, his gaze cutting through the noise. "Maybe the problem isn't who I'm seen with. Maybe it's the fact that you think you can tell me who's worthy of my time." The room went silent. Even Lydia looked startled. After the meeting, she followed him out. "Lucas, that was bold. Or stupid. Depends on how the story ends," she said softly. Outside the building, Jasmine was waiting. Not for him, but for a delivery pickup. Their eyes met across the plaza. For a second, everything slowed. But before he could approach, paparazzi swarmed, shouting her name. She froze, deer in headlights, while he stepped forward instinctively, shielding her with his coat. "Back off," he barked at the photographers. "She's got nothing to do with you." They didn't listen. Cameras clicked like machine guns. And in that instant, the thing Jasmine feared most became real. Her face, her name, her private life, all exposed. She tore away from him, sprinting into the crowd, disappearing into the city before he could follow. That night, he drove to her apartment. She didn't answer his knocks. Instead, a neighbor cracked the door and said gently, "She left. Said she needed air." Lucas stood there for a long time, rain starting to fall again, until Lydia called him. "They're saying you assaulted a photographer. You need to release a statement before Tyler spins this." He looked out at the dark street. "Let him. Spin it. I'm done living by their rules." The next morning, Jasmine sat at the edge of the Hudson River, watching the water churn. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. When she answered, a deep voice said, "Miss Porter? This is William Caldwell." She froze. "His father?" "Yes, I'd like to meet." 2 hours later, she was sitting in a private restaurant, surrounded by men in suits who looked like they hadn't smiled in decades. William Caldwell arrived last, crisp and severe. "I appreciate you coming," he said. "I didn't have much of a choice," she replied quietly. He studied her, eyes cold. "My son has a soft spot for you. I'm here to make that problem go away." "Problem? You seem like a good person," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. "But good people don't survive in our world. Take this. Walk away." She didn't touch it. "You really think money fixes everything, don't you?" "It fixes most things," he said without hesitation. "And what it can't fix, it buries." She pushed the envelope back. "Tell your son I said no." His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." She stood. "So did he, when he learned this from you." When Lucas found out what his father had done, something inside him snapped. He confronted William at the Caldwell estate, where the old man was sipping whiskey by the fireplace. "How dare you humiliate her like that?" Lucas shouted. "I protected you," William said calmly. "You're thinking with your heart, not your head. Maybe that's the problem. You've spent your whole life pretending you don't have one." William stood, eyes blazing. "You think love will keep the lights on in your empire? You're my son, and you're going to destroy everything we built." Lucas's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then maybe it deserves to fall." He left without another word. For days, Jasmine avoided him. She quit her cafe job, switched phone numbers, and started delivering for another company under a different name. But fate wasn't done with them. One night, while dropping off an order downtown, she spotted Lucas across the street, alone, leaning against his car, looking lost. She hesitated, heart pounding, but he'd already seen her. "Jasmine," he said softly, stepping closer. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Neither should you." They stood there, inches apart, rain starting again like some cruel déjà vu. "Your father came to see me," she said finally. "I know. He offered me money to disappear." His jaw tightened. "And you didn't take it?" "I don't want your money, Lucas. I just wanted peace." He reached for her hand, tentative. "Then let me give you that, even if the world burns around us." Her voice cracked. "You can't save me from what people say." "Maybe not," he said, "but I can stand beside you while they say it." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she let him hold her. Across the street, a camera clicked. Another story was already being written. By the next morning, headlines screamed about the reckless romance threatening corporate stability. Investors demanded answers. Tyler Blake called an emergency press conference, painting Lucas as irresponsible and unstable. But Lucas didn't attend. Instead, he was in a hospital room beside Gina Porter, who'd collapsed from exhaustion after reporters swarmed her home. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked the doctor. "She'll recover. But she needs rest," the doctor said. When Jasmine saw him waiting outside the room, her expression was unreadable. "Why are you here?" "Because this is my fault." "No," she said, shaking her head. "This is what happens when two worlds collide. Someone always gets hurt." He stepped closer. "Then let me take the hit." She looked at him, tears threatening. "You don't get it, Lucas. You'll survive this. You'll go back to your penthouse and your empire. But me? I lose everything." He didn't argue. He just said softly, "Then I'll build something new, with you." She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said everything: fear, longing, and the faint, dangerous spark of hope. That night, Lucas made a choice that would change everything. He walked into his company headquarters, summoned the board, and handed them a document. "Effective immediately," he said. "I'm stepping down as CEO." The room erupted. "You can't do this," one shouted. "I just did," he said. "I'm tired of living in a cage built out of gold." Lydia stared at him, stunned. "Where will you go?" He smiled faintly. "Home, wherever she is." When he left that building, the cameras were waiting. Reporters shouted questions, flashes exploded. But for the first time in his life, Lucas Caldwell didn't look away. He walked straight into the storm, free and unguarded. But freedom comes with a price, and the world wasn't ready to let him go quietly. Tyler Blake had one more move to play, a move that would push both Lucas and Jasmine to the edge before they could ever find peace. And that's where their real test began. The night after he stepped down, the city felt different, too. Like someone had turned the volume knob to the lowest notch and left a soft static behind. Lucas walked without purpose, hands in his coat pockets, the skyline's cold glitter following him like a rumor he couldn't shake. He'd traded a throne for a sidewalk. He could still hear the boardroom's outrage in the back of his skull, could still feel his father's stare, hollow and disappointed, the kind of stare that tried to carve a lesson into bone. Funny thing, though, without the title, without the meetings, without the relentless itinerary, he felt taller, lighter, like he could breathe through his ribs for the first time in a decade. But breathing wasn't the same as living, and living wasn't the same as being with her. That's where his steps were taking him, even if he didn't admit it out loud. Jasmine opened the door before he could knock. She looked tired, dark moons under her eyes, hair pulled into a practical knot, the scent of dish soap and cinnamon drifting out from the kitchen. "You shouldn't be here," she said, but her voice didn't match the words. He smiled anyway, and the worry lines eased a little around her mouth. The apartment was the same as before, small, warm, honest. A stack of medical bills on the coffee table. A chipped mug that said, "Good things take time." He wanted to fix everything he could see. That impulse had built empires for him. But here, the rules were different. You couldn't buy dignity. You had to hold it with your hands and not drop it. They made tea. They didn't talk about headlines or Tyler or the board. They talked about ordinary things, what a new diner might smell like if it was hers, which recipes she'd lead with, whether she'd put the coffee machine near the north-facing window because morning light makes steam look like silk. He listened. He didn't plan. That was new for him, too. When she laughed, he realized how much he'd missed that sound the last few days, and he tucked it away inside like a match you save for a dark room you know you'll have to walk into later. When she walked him to the door, he paused and looked over his shoulder at the living room. The bills, the clean counters, the stubborn bravery of a life that didn't have a safety net. "I meant what I said," he told her. "I'll build something new with you. Not for you. With you." She searched his face for the catch, the clause, the small print. She didn't find it. She nodded once, slowly, like a contract signed in a language older than paper. The world didn't nod with her. It snarled. By morning, a dozen sites had run with a fresh angle. Caldwell abandons company, chooses love. The story tried to turn tenderness into scandal. Lydia called at 8 a.m., voice clipped and controlled. Tyler scheduled a press briefing for tomorrow. "He's pitching a buyout proposal to your board on an emergency basis. He wants to make you the poster boy of reckless romance and himself the savior of stability." Lucas leaned his head against the cool window and listened to the city rise. "Let him," he said. "He'll sell them certainty, but certainty's a cheap brand that falls apart in the wash." "You sound calm," she said. "I'm with someone who reminds me what the ground feels like," he said. "It's hard to fall when you remember. You're standing." She hesitated. "Then brace. I've also heard whispers he's lining up. Something personal. Not about the board. About Jasmine." The line felt like it tightened around his throat. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet, but he's meeting with Gloria Hale at the Beaumont this afternoon. And she's not subtle." He'd always known Gloria's interest in him was a complicated blend of affection, hunger, and a need to win. He just didn't expect her to weaponize it. Or maybe he did, and he didn't want to admit it. Either way, it meant the window was closing. Jasmine took a reduced schedule for a week. Some deliveries, a few early cafe shifts somewhere new, to keep the wolves guessing. That afternoon, she and Danny ate on a loading dock in the shade, legs dangling, sharing fries from a paper boat. "You good?" he asked around a mouthful of ketchup and salt. "Define good," she said, half smiling. "Mom's stable, doctor. Says stress took her for a ride. The apartment's quiet again. The phone's less crazy. People forget fast. That's the one thing the headlines and the rent have in common." "Men like him don't forget," Danny said. "That boy looked at you like a feral cat looks at warm light." He waved a hand. I'm saying he's in. Deep. She rolled a fry between her fingers. Is that a warning? It's a vote, he said. I vote you don't run from something real because the world makes noise. She took a breath that felt like relief and fear got tangled up inside it. He stepped down, she said, more to herself than to Danny. He gave up. Everything. That ain't everything. It's just the thing everybody can see. He was right. She knew it. Still, the practical part of her brain kept a ledger of trouble. It added lines in red whenever a new car slowed on her block, or a new rumor popped on a blog. She wished she could tell that ledger to shut up. It didn't listen. Gloria Hale texted him that evening. Dinner. Beaumont. I won't be refused. He could have ignored it, but part of him believed in confronting a problem before it congealed. He arrived to find her already seated, twirling the aoki stem of a martini he didn't need to taste to know it was expensive. Congratulations, she said, tilting her head. You finally made your life interesting enough for the rest of us. I didn't do it for you, he said. You never do, she replied, a touch of something like hurt curling around the words. But that never stopped me from watching. She leaned in. You won't last a month outside your little glass castle. And when you come back, humbler and hungrier, remember who told you the truth. There's more than one kind of truth, he said. You picked the one that looks good in photographs. She laughed, bright and bitter. And you picked the one that looks like a charity case with pretty eyes. He didn't flinch, and that annoyed her more than if he'd argued. She set the martini down. Tyler's going to bury you, she said matter-of-factly. He's working on something personal. Something that makes you look gullible. Like what? Ask him. She stood, smoothed her dress, and put a hand on his shoulder, nails cool through fabric. I could have helped you, she said softly. You never learned how to ask. She left him with the check, and a view of himself reflected in a window. He didn't own any more. He wasn't sure if he felt pity for her or if he felt nothing at all. Maybe both. Maybe neither. The next day, Lydia sent him a link with no message. An event listing for the Blake Memorial Foundation, a workforce development nonprofit, hosting a private open house for service workers seeking career mentorship. The address was an anonymous midtown floor, with an elevator that probably smelled like printer toner and ambition. He stared at the screen. Tyler didn't start charities. Tyler started fires and called them candles. Jasmine received her own invitation on paper, tucked under her door like a coupon made of heavy stock. The letter said her name like it had a right to it. Promised opportunities. Promised learning. Promised discretion. The Tyler Blake Foundation. Watermark bled slightly where the ink got too eager. She shouldn't have gone. She knew better. But the language on the page sang directly to the part of her that woke before dawn, and wiped counters and ran stairs and added numbers. She didn't tell Lucas. She didn't want him to see it if it turned out to be nothing. There's a particular loneliness in wanting to spare someone who keeps offering to help. The reception looked like it had been assembled from pieces of other events. Folding chairs in neat rows, clipboards at a registration table, smiling staffers whose smiles didn't quite touch their eyes. A woman in a forest green blazer guided Jasmine to a small conference room with a pot of coffee that tasted a little like cardboard and hope. We're thrilled you're here, the woman said. We've heard your story. Jasmine stiffened. My story? Your work ethic, the woman added, adjusting her smile. We think you're a great candidate for our mentorship cohort. She placed a form on the table and slid over a pen. This is just an NDA, standard. It's about protecting the privacy of our donors and guest speakers. Jasmine had signed NDAs before. Restaurants made you sign for training schedules sometimes. But the text here was dense and syrupy, and full of careful traps. She scanned it, trying to decode the edges. The woman waited, patient as granite. "You can take your time," she said, "but the sooner we process you, the sooner we can start connecting you with resources." Jasmine thought of banquet halls, where she'd been a ghost in black shoes. Thought of rooms where her presence had been part of a service, not part of a conversation. She wanted a different room. She wanted one where she could breathe without asking permission from the air. She signed. The woman led her through a short interview, background, goals, financial pressure points, all presented as a warm hand extended over a cold river. Then she offered a glass of water and left the room for a moment. When she returned, a man followed, tucking a phone into his jacket. His smile was perfect and empty. "Ms. Porter," he said, "I'm the program director. We're huge admirers of resilience here." He spoke like a man who thought adjectives could feed you. "We're planning a short profile on mentoring. Success stories. Would you be willing to let our writer ask a few questions?" "I didn't agree to press," Jasmine said quietly. "It's not press," he assured, palms up, disarming. "It's internal. Donors like to understand impact. You know how it is? People give when they see faces, not spreadsheets." She hesitated. "I don't want to talk about my personal life." "Of course not," he said, nodding so eagerly it almost felt like mockery. "Just your work, your dreams. That's all." They recorded the conversation. She talked about her diner idea, about coffee near a north window, about wanting a place where people felt like they could keep the good parts of a bad day and leave the rest on a plate someone had warmed for them. She didn't mention Lucas by name. She didn't need to. The director was too skilled at threading a needle with invisible thread. "Some people say upward mobility is luck," he mused. "What do you say?" "I say luck shows up late," she replied. "Hard work holds the door." He chuckled and closed his notebook. "Beautifully said." As she rose to leave, the woman in the green blazer slid another form across the table. "This is just a release that lets us share your story internally. No names," Jasmine signed. She didn't see the sentence on the back page that allowed edited summaries consistent with program goals to be shared with stakeholders and the philanthropic community. She didn't know philanthropic community had a broadcast channel with 3 million followers and a PR team faster than guilt. Lucas didn't hear from her that afternoon, which was unusual, so he went to the foundation address on instinct, rode the elevator, and stepped into a lobby that smelled like cost-cutting. A receptionist pasted on a neutral smile. "Name?" "Lucas Caldwell," he said, and watched the smile fracture. "I'm here for someone." "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell. Our programming is private." He leaned down, dropped his voice. "Then you'll understand why I'm about to make this very public." There was a pause in which even the copier seemed to stop humming. The receptionist scribbled something on a notepad and vanished. The program director appeared a moment later, flanked by 2 assistants who looked like contract clauses in suits. "Mr. Caldwell," he said sunny, "always a pleasure to meet a philanthropist." "That's not what people call me today," Lucas said. "Where's Jasmine Porter?" "She was here for a standard intake," the director replied. "The word standard doing a lot of work. We're thrilled she joined our cohort." "Your cohort," Lucas said flatly, "is a net you drag through a storm so you can claim what you catch." "Your cynicism is noted," the director said, still smiling. "We help people." "You help yourself to people," Lucas said. Give me her file. And tell your photographer to delete whatever you think you own." "Mr. Caldwell," the IBD director said, the smile finally tightening at the edges, "you're not in a position to make demands." "Do you want to find out what position I am in?" he asked softly, and something in his tone made the assistants take a half step back, like they felt a temperature drop nobody else could see. Jasmine stepped into the hallway then, clutching a tote bag to her chest. Relief and anger and shame fired across her face in quick succession. "You can't keep doing this," she said before he could speak. "You can't keep bursting into rooms to rescue me like I'm drowning. I chose to be here," he swallowed. "I know. I just wanted to make sure they didn't—" "Didn't what?" she asked, and the elevator dinged behind her like a bell in a fight you never meant to have. "Didn't treat me like a project? Like I need your last name to open a door? That's not love. That's a message, and I can't be your message." "Jasmine," he said, voice raw. "I just want to help," she finished, softer now, the anger inhaling itself. "I know, but sometimes helping feels like being looked at under a bright light. I've been under enough lights." He nodded, the kind of nod a man makes when he realizes his instinct to hold tight is the very thing that might push someone away. "Okay," he said. "I'll wait outside." He did. He waited on the sidewalk as the afternoon slid into evening and the city switched its lights on one window at a time. When she finally emerged, she slipped her hand into his without words, and they walked 3 blocks like that, dodging glances, sharing silence. He didn't bring up the foundation again. He didn't need to. The damage, if any, would show itself soon enough. That's how damage works. It introduces itself when you're washing a mug, or folding a shirt, or watching a streetlight blink. It showed up 40 hours later. Lydia called at 6 a.m., the time she reserved for emergencies and miracles. "You can't fix this with a check," she said without preamble, and he sat up in bed so fast the room blurred. Tyler's team released a mentor spotlight video. It features Jasmine. It's framed like a cautionary tale about how rich men use hope as a leash. Her voice, her face, it's cut to make you a ghost with cold hands. He was already pulling on jeans. "Send it." He watched it in the kitchen, coffee untouched. They'd spliced her interview into a narrative that wasn't hers, selected pauses like scalpels, altered context with surgical precision. "Sometimes people promise to save you," her voice said over B-roll of his office building and flashes of his face from past interviews, "but all they want is to see themselves reflected in your gratitude." The next cut placed a sentence she'd said about a former supervisor right after a photo of Lucas at a gala, as if she'd said it about him. "They made me feel small on purpose." The logo in the corner read, "Blake Memorial Foundation." The caption read, "Impact Stories. Choosing your own future." And somewhere under it, a link to donate. He didn't realize he'd clenched his fist until the ceramic mug cracked in his hand. He didn't feel the sting until a drop of blood hit the counter like a punctuation mark. He didn't call her. He didn't trust his voice. Jasmine woke to 3 missed calls from Danny and 12 messages from numbers she didn't know. The first message was a link. The second was a sentence. "Thought you weren't like the others." She pressed play and watched herself speak in a voice that didn't belong to her anymore. For a moment, she thought she might be sick. Her. Mom shuffled out of the bedroom, robe dragging, worry already awake on her face. "What is it?" Jasmine couldn't answer. She threw on jeans and a hoodie and ran, stairwell echoing, lungs on fire. Because the only person who could understand what this felt like was the one person she'd apparently just betrayed in front of the whole city. He was waiting on the pier behind his building, water restless, wind cold, sky a gray sheet about to tear. He looked like the version of himself he never showed anyone. Jaw tight, eyes unarmored, a man who'd learned how to stand alone and was finally tired of it. She slowed, breath hitching. The distance between them only the length of a bad sentence, and the width of a misunderstanding big enough to drown in. "They cut it," she said, voice breaking. "Lucas." They cut it to sound like, "I know what they did," he said quietly. "I don't know why you were in that room." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I wanted help," she admitted. "Not from them. From anyone who wasn't you. Because I needed to prove it to myself that this wasn't about me," he finished. He stepped closer. "Or your pride." "My independence," she corrected, a tear slipping free. Which might be the same thing in a different dress. He looked out at the water. The wind found its way under his coat and through his ribs. "I can fight Tyler," he said. "I can drag him through court until his lawyers forget their kids' birthdays, but I can't fight something if it looks like it came from you." "It didn't," she whispered. "Lucas, you have to know that." "I want to," he said, voice hoarse with the effort of trying. "God, I want to. But the city's already chosen a story. And sometimes the story we don't choose is the one that chooses us." She reached for his hand and stopped halfway. "So, what happens now?" he answered without looking at her. "Now, we go quiet," he said. "We let the noise tire itself out. We don't feed it." She nodded, swallowing a sob that tasted like salt and steel. "Okay. Okay," he echoed. It sounded like a goodbye that wouldn't admit it was one. They didn't text that day. Or the next. Sometimes love holds its breath because it's afraid of what will come out if it exhales. Tyler held a press conference in a room with too much air conditioning and not enough soul. He spoke about integrity and leadership and the importance of focusing on the real work of serving communities. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. The logo on the corner of the video did all the pointing. His mouth didn't. Gloria posted a photo from a charity gala, bare shoulders and a caption about choosing partners who understand your world. She didn't tag him. She didn't have to. William called his son and left a message that sounded like a sermon and a dare. "I taught you to separate the personal from the professional. The world is teaching you what happens when you don't." Lucas didn't respond. He sat on the floor of his living room with his back against the couch and watched the light crawl across the rug like it had somewhere better to be. He remembered jasmine steam over a small cafe table. He remembered a rain-wet paper bag tearing in his hands. He remembered the way her laughter rounded off the sharp edges of every room she walked into. How do you erase a story that true? Because a false one is louder. At midnight, his doorbell rang. He checked the screen and saw Lydia, hair in a knot, coat half-zipped, cheeks flushed from the cold. "I broke into my own office," she said, as he opened the door. "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Just look at this." She set her laptop on his counter and pulled up an email thread. "This foundation video? It was pitched a week before Jasmine ever set foot in their building. Subject line, Leverage Caldwell Romance for Human Interest. Sender, TB Comms. Recipient, a PR firm we've tangled with before." His hands curled into fists without permission. "They planned it. They built a frame," she said. All they needed was a picture. He closed his eyes for a beat. Can we prove it in court? Maybe, she said. But trials happen after damage. Right now, we need something before. Before what? Before you and Jasmine don't survive the version of this where you stop trusting each other. He stared at the screen, at the line where someone had written, "Find. Subject access, coax if necessary." He pictured the green blazer, the perfect smile, the clipboard, and then he pictured something else. A north window, morning light, steam like silk, a line of customers who came for pancakes and left with something warmer than syrup. He grabbed his coat. "We're going to her," he said. "It's after midnight. Then we're already late." They drove through a city that looked like it had washed its face. Street cleaners, quiet neon, a couple arguing softly under a pharmacy awning. When they reached Jasmine's building, Lucas told Lydia to wait in the car. He buzzed once, then twice. On the third buzz, the speaker crackled. "Who is it?" "It's me." "I can't," she said, voice muffled and small through the metal. "I have proof," he said. "Lydia found it. They set you up. They set us up. Please," he added, and the word felt strange and right in his mouth. "Please." Silence. Then the door clicked. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, heart a hammer that had forgotten about nails. She stood in the doorway with an oversized sweater pulled around her like a shield, eyes swollen. He didn't step past the threshold. He held out the laptop. "You need to see this." She watched the cursor move across the emails as if it were dragging something heavy behind it. When she hit the phrase, "coax, if necessary," she sank onto the arm of the couch and pressed her hand to her mouth. "They wanted me to say it," she whispered, "and I didn't. But they built it anyway." She blinked up at him, shame and fury warring with relief. "I thought you'd believe them." "I almost did," he admitted. "Then I remembered how it felt when you laughed. And I couldn't make that sound a lie, no matter how many times I played their video." The relief broke something inside her. She sobbed once, sharp and helpless, then shook her head like she was angry at herself for it. "I signed," she said. "I signed their paper." He sat on the coffee table, close but not touching. "They wrote it to be a trap," he said gently. "It would have caught almost anyone." "Not you," she said, a reflexive jab she regretted as soon as it left her mouth. "I mean, you read everything." "I've also missed the obvious while catching the fine print," he said. "That's why I need people who tell me when I'm being stupid." She looked at him for a long time. Something fragile stepped into the room then, something like trust, but older. "What now?" she asked. "We burn his frame," he said, "publicly, cleanly. Not with rage. Rage is a short match. With facts. And we do it together. If you want to," she wiped her face. "The sweater sleeve coming away damp." "I want to." "Then tomorrow," he said. "We call a press conference. Not in a hotel ballroom. Not on a stage. In your apartment," she gaped. "In my Lucas, my couch has springs you can hear." "Good," he said. "Let them hear what real sounds like." Lydia stepped into the doorway like she'd always belonged there. "I'll bring a mic and a streaming kit," she said, businesslike and gentle all at once. "We'll keep it to 10 minutes. No questions, just your voices. And 1 email thread." Jasmine glanced around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. The chipped mug, the stack of bills, the plant on the sill that refused to die. "What if they call it a pity show?" she asked. "They will," Lucas said. "Then they'll watch it 12 million times." The sun wasn't up yet when he left. They didn't kiss. They didn't promise. They just stood in the doorway and let their fingers find each other for a second that stretched and finally let go. On the walk back to the car, the air felt thinner, like the city had been holding its breath and had finally decided to give some of it back. He didn't know that Tyler had a second act ready, that Gloria had agreed to deliver something that could break a back if it landed right. He didn't know that the foundation had one more clip cued, a lie wrapped in an apology dressed in a headline. He only knew this: when the cameras turned on in that small living room, the light would hit two faces and one thread of truth, and the world would be asked to decide what it believed. And if you've ever watched a storm roll in across water, you know the way the surface goes dark long before the rain arrives. That's what the room felt like the next morning, as Lydia clipped a microphone to Jasmine's sweater and tested the levels. That hush, that gathering, that moment when everything can still go either way. "Ready?" Lydia asked. Jasmine looked at Lucas. Lucas looked back. "Ready," she said. They didn't see the black car slip to a stop half a block away. They didn't see Gloria step out, sunglasses on, envelope in hand, every step measured. They didn't see Tyler on a split screen in a studio somewhere, smiling like a man who believes endings are just beginnings with the labels switched. They only saw the red light go live. They only heard their own voices. They only felt the truth in their throats, waiting for permission to be said aloud. And that's when everything changed. When the red light went out, the silence didn't. It hung in the room like leftover electricity, the kind that makes your skin hum even after the thunder passes. Jasmine sat perfectly still, her hand still resting on her lap where she'd kept it steady for the last 10 minutes of live broadcast. Lucas reached forward and turned off the microphone. For a moment, they just looked at each other, breathing the same heavy air. No words, just the quiet hum of a heater and the faint city siren wailing somewhere far away. Then Lydia's phone started buzzing. 1, 2, 5, then 10 notifications. Comments, shares, messages. "It's spreading," she said, half whispering, eyes on the screen. "And it's not bad. It's God, it's good." She handed the phone to Lucas, who saw headlines flipping, like flashcards in real time. Caldwell and Porter speak truth. Raw honesty from former CEO. Love story or PR genius? The internet can't decide. By noon, the numbers were impossible to ignore. Millions of views, thousands of comments, some supportive, some venomous, all loud. And loud meant power. For the first time in weeks, the noise was on their side. Jasmine leaned back on the couch, her voice small. "So, that's it? We just wait now?" "No," Lucas said. "Now we let the truth breathe. Then we move." She studied him. "Move how?" He didn't answer right away, because even as he said it, the truth was tightening around his ribs. He knew Tyler wouldn't let this go, not after being outplayed in front of the whole city. Men like Tyler didn't forgive, they recalculated. The recalculation began within hours. At 5 that evening, a post appeared on a financial gossip site. Insider leak. Caldwell Industries' former CEO misused corporate funds for personal affairs. Beneath it were blurred documents, email snippets, and bank statements, half true, half manufactured. It didn't matter which half was which. In the public eye, scandal doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to sound possible. Lydia stormed into Lucas's apartment, laptop in hand. "They're saying you diverted funds through a consulting expense, something called JP Holdings." He frowned. "That's not real. It doesn't have to be real. It just has to trend." Jasmine was standing by the window, arms folded. "They're trying to bury what we said this morning." Lucas looked at her, guilt flickering. They're trying to bury you too. That's what this is about. I can handle it, she said, but her voice trembled. He stepped closer, gentle. You shouldn't have to. For the first time since they'd met, Jasmine looked at him not with admiration or fear, but with something else. Fatigue. Lucas, you keep saying that I shouldn't have to. But that's my life. I always have to. The room went quiet again. Lydia shifted awkwardly, sensing the air had turned fragile. I'll handle the statement, she said, gathering her things. We'll call it fake, get legal involved. Lucas nodded absently, but his eyes stayed on Jasmine. That night, they sat side by side watching the city lights bleed into the Hudson. I never asked for this, Jasmine said softly. I know. I wanted simple. A diner, a window, peace. And now you have headlines, she laughed bitterly. Guess dreams come with fine print. He turned toward her, searching her face. If you want out, say it. I'll understand, she shook her head, eyes glistening. It's not about getting out. It's about figuring out who I am in the middle of all this. Because right now, I don't even recognize my own voice on screen. He reached for her hand. Then let's find it again. But outside, the next strike was already loading. Tyler Blake didn't sleep much. He sat in his penthouse office, staring at 3 screens. On one, financial forecasts. On another, social media analytics. On the third, a still image of Lucas and Jasmine from their live stream paused mid-sentence. The headline beneath it read, Truth or Performance. He leaned back, smirking. You made one mistake, Caldwell, he murmured to himself. You underestimated how long the world stays sympathetic. He turned to the woman sitting across from him, crossing her legs in a sleek gray dress, Gloria Hale. Her expression was unreadable, her lipstick perfect. Is it ready? Tyler asked. She slid a manila envelope across the table. You'll get your betrayal. Just make sure it looks like it came from her. He smiled. Don't worry, I've built entire empires out of looks like. The envelope contained a USB drive, a few printed screenshots, and one piece of bait. An email thread supposedly between Jasmine and a journalist, hinting she'd leaked her own story for attention. Fabricated, of course, but forged with just enough truth to sting. Gloria's connections in media would make sure it landed where it needed to. By morning, the headline exploded. Was the live stream staged? New evidence suggests Porter leaked her own story. Photos, quotes, sources. A full-blown feeding frenzy. Jasmine woke up to her phone vibrating across the nightstand like it was alive. She read the headline 3 times before the words made sense. Her stomach turned. No. Her mom called from the kitchen. Honey? Are you seeing this? I am, she whispered, voice breaking. Then her phone buzzed again. This time, Lucas. She didn't answer. He called again. Finally, she picked up. Please tell me you know this is fake. I do, he said. But the world doesn't. What do we do? Nothing. Not yet. If we react too fast, we look guilty. Lydia's tracking where it came from. You don't believe Of course I don't. But there was hesitation, barely a breath, a fraction of silence that felt like 1,000 miles. She heard it. And once you hear doubt in someone's voice, you can't unhear it. That night, Lucas's penthouse felt colder than ever. Lydia was on her laptop, muttering, scrolling, cursing under her breath. I traced the article's metadata. It was uploaded through an intermediary account tied to a PR firm Blake's used before. But here's the twist. She turned the screen toward him. The initial file originated from Gloria Hale's media group. Lucas's blood went cold. She's working with him. Or for him, Lydia said. Either way, the goal's the same. Destroy you both. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion pressing behind his eyes. And Jasmine? She's the weapon. He hated that word. Weapon! That's what they'd made her into. The woman who'd brought him peace was now the bullet in a war he never wanted. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat on her bed, scrolling through comments until she couldn't feel her hands. Gold digger. Fake victim. PR stunt. The words blurred together into one endless wave of venom. Danny called twice, but she didn't answer. Instead, she threw her phone aside and buried her face in her hands. For the first time since she'd met Lucas, she wished she'd never delivered that lunch. The next day, cameras gathered outside her apartment. Reporters yelled questions through the hallway. Did you leak the story, Jasmine? Did you fake the video? She tried to leave quietly through the back door, hoodie up, but someone followed. A young man with a mic and too much nerve stepped in front of her scooter. You used him, didn't you? Admit it! She froze. Then something in her snapped. You think I'd survive 5 minutes in his world if I wasn't real? She shouted. You think I'd choose this kind of hell for attention? The man flinched, backing away. But the camera was rolling. Her anger would be the next viral clip. By evening, Lucas arrived at her apartment. The street was chaos. Photographers, gossip vloggers, strangers holding up phones like weapons. He pushed through the crowd until he reached her door. When she opened it, her eyes were red from crying, and her hands were trembling. Lucas, they won't stop, she said. Voice hoarse. I know. You said you'd protect me. I'm trying. No, she whispered. You're fighting him, not protecting me, he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. You think I can just what? And make this vanish? I lost everything trying to keep you safe. And I lost myself trying to love you. She snapped, tears spilling. You think it's easy being the poor girl who ruined a millionaire? I can't walk into a grocery store without being called a liar. He stepped closer, but she moved back. Jasmine, go, she said quietly. Please, just go before this kills both of us. He wanted to argue, wanted to promise things he couldn't guarantee. But her eyes said the conversation was already over. He left without another word. Outside, flashbulbs followed him into the night. Days blurred after that. Tyler's narrative took hold. Gloria made carefully timed appearances on talk shows, pretending sympathy while fanning flames. Lucas was under a lot of stress, she'd say sweetly. I just hope everyone involved finds peace. She always looked directly at the camera when she said, everyone. Lydia kept digging. Every trail led to Blake's firm, but none were clean enough for court. He's too careful, she said. He leaves fingerprints everywhere, but never his own. Then came the call that shifted everything. A journalist Lucas trusted, a quiet man named Henry from a small investigative outlet, reached out. I have something you'll want to see, he said. But it's not good. They met in a diner off 8th Avenue, the kind with cracked red booths and coffee that tasted like burnt midnight. Henry slid an envelope across the table. Internal memos, he said. Blake's company authorized payment to Gloria Hale's team for a strategic media initiative, the same day the leak went live. Lucas opened the file, heart pounding. There it was, proof. But then Henry added, there's more. Someone from your own circle's been feeding them details. Personal ones, schedules, calls. They're playing both sides. Lucas frowned. Who? Henry hesitated. I can't confirm yet. But the emails came from a device registered to Lydia Jameson. Lucas froze. That name, his last remaining ally. He left the diner in a fog, the paper trembling in his hands. Could it be true? Lydia, the woman who'd stood by him through everything, betraying him now? He didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was too precise, too intimate. He confronted her that night in his apartment. How long have you been working with them? He asked, voice steady but dangerous. Lydia looked up from her laptop, shocked. What? Henry gave me documents, emails from your device to Tyler's firm. Her eyes widened. That's impossible. I didn't, Lucas, I swear. Don't. His voice cracked like glass. I trusted you. Then keep trusting me, she pleaded. He must have cloned my access. I've been tracking his digital moves all week. He's smart, but he leaves shadows. But all Lucas could see were numbers and names that matched hers. Get out, he said quietly. Lucas, I said get out. She hesitated, tears brimming, then packed her things. You're letting him win, she whispered at the door. That's what this is. Not betrayal, strategy. And you're falling for it. When she left, the silence that followed was worse than any scandal. Lucas stood by the window until dawn, watching the skyline blur into daylight. He was alone again. Completely this time. Jasmine was gone. Lydia was gone. His company, his name, everything dismantled piece by piece. But the thing about a man who's already lost everything is that he stops fearing the cost of revenge. He picked up his phone and called Henry. You still have that proof? I do. Then get ready, Lucas said, his voice low and calm. We're going to burn them both. Henry hesitated. That's dangerous. So is silence, Lucas said. And somewhere in a studio across town, Tyler Blake smiled at the footage playing on his screen. Lucas alone, angry, unraveling. Perfect, he muttered. Now all that's left is for him to destroy himself. Because what Tyler didn't know was that love, once betrayed, doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It becomes a weapon sharper than greed, and Lucas Caldwell was about to learn how to wield it. Lucas didn't sleep the night he decided to go to war. He paced the perimeter of his apartment like a restless animal, the glass walls turning him into a silhouette, drifting past a city that never cared enough to look up. Every lamp cast a different version of his face across the room, and he didn't like any of them. In the kitchen, the clock on the stove rolled past 3 and then 4. He brewed coffee he wouldn't drink, and watched the steam climb and disappear. There's a certain bravery in staying still when you want to run. There's a different kind when you walk toward a fire, because you know your name is already in the smoke. Henry met him at dawn in a tiny office above a locksmith's shop where the heater rattled like it had asthma. The journalist wore the same gray sweater as last time, and a look that said he'd learned to separate truth from spectacle, because spectacle pays fast and truth pays late. I've cross-checked what I can, Henry said, spreading papers across a scarred table. Payment authorizations from Tyler's company to a shell marketing vendor contracted by Gloria Hale's media group. The dates line up with the Mentor video and the leak accusing Jasmine of staging your live stream. He tapped a page. This memo references Leverage Caldwell Fallout for brand lift. It's corporate. Code for bleed him for clicks, Lucas scanned each line with the focus that had once built a company one signature at a time. And the emails from my side? Henry hesitated. They trace to Lydia's device, yes, but the patterns feel machine-scrubbed. Too neat. If anyone in your orbit could spot a digital forgery, it would have been her. She said the same, Lucas murmured, staring at the timestamps like they might confess if he glared long enough. He wanted to call her. He wanted to ask 100 questions he didn't trust himself to hear the answers to. Instead, he said, "Run it." Henry raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I'm done being careful while he gets creative," Lucas said. "Tell the story. Name names. If he sues, we depose." Henry nodded slowly, like a doctor agreeing to a dangerous surgery because the patient's already on the table. "It won't fix the thing between you and Jasmine," he said, almost gently. "It's not meant to," Lucas replied. "It's meant to stop the bleeding so I can try." Henry packed the files back into his envelope. "Give me 24 hours. 24 hours is a short eternity when your life is a headline." Lucas walked out into a morning that looked like clean paper. The sky a pale promise above hard sidewalks. He wanted to go to Jasmine's door and explain everything. He wanted to tell her about the memos, about the way the foundation was a trap pre-laid with her name stitched into the net. He wanted to tell her he almost believed the worst and hated himself for it. He didn't. If the story dropped, it would drag her back into the storm. If he went to her now, he'd bring the thunder to her doorstep. So he turned away from the street that led to her and drove aimlessly, letting the city's grid make choices for him. He ended up at Gina Porter's building anyway, parked at the far end of the block, where the brick changed color like it had been repaired after something broke that no one talks about anymore. He sat there with the car off and the window cracked, listening to kids on scooters argue about who got to be it. He didn't go in. He just watched the door as if watching could be a form of penance. Jasmine woke to a softer quiet than usual. No buzzsaw of notifications. No reporters camping by the stoop. Maybe the storm had moved to someone else's roof for a day. She made her mother oatmeal, sliced a banana into coins, tried to smile as Gina insisted she take the bigger bowl. "Eat. You look like a strong wind could take you," her mother said. "I feel like one already did," Jasmine replied, but she ate anyway. The first spoonful settled in her stomach like something she could build on. Simple, warm, undisguised. "I might take a longer delivery route today," she said. "Clear my head. Take Danny with you." "Mom, I'm not in high school. Humor me," Gina said, which in mother language means, "I watched you fall down, and I'm not done worrying about the ground." In the hallway on her way out, Jasmine found an envelope slid under her mat. No name on the front, just a crisp white rectangle like a hospital sheet. For a second, she thought about dropping it in the trash without looking. She was done letting other people's paper define her. But she opened it. Inside, a single photo printed on glossy stock. It showed Lucas and Gloria in a shadowed corner of the Beaumont, heads close, her hand on his shoulder. Underneath, a typed note. "People return to what they are." The floor seemed to tilt. She held the picture at arm's length like distance could dilute poison. The date in the corner was from 2 days before the live stream, after the foundation trap, before they'd pressed "Go Live" on the truth. She felt the old reflex rise, the one that tells you to run before someone says they never meant it. She took a breath and shut the reflex in a drawer. Photographs don't tell stories. They freeze angles. She slid the picture back into the envelope and tucked it into her jacket. She'd ask him, not in a text, not in a hallway, not with the city listening. In a room, with eyes. The new her would wait for answers before she built the ending herself. Tyler Blake didn't wait for anything. By noon, he was on a panel downtown, sitting between a philanthropist who bought libraries and a tech founder who sold attention spans. He wore humility like a fitted suit. "This conversation about accountability is important," he said, palms open. "We all have to own our mistakes." He didn't mention any. While he spoke, his team prepped a counter-surge in case Henry's story landed. They'd deny, deflect, and bury under a new controversy if necessary. Professional arsonists keep extra matches. Lucas spent the afternoon in the building where he grew up. A pre-war mid-rise with an elevator that had a personality and a mirror that told the truth. William Caldwell had not invited him. Lucas let himself in with a key code that hadn't changed in 8 years, because control makes you forget about locks. The living room was a museum of a man. Leather chair, decanter half full, fireplace unlit, a wall of framed deals disguised as diplomas. William stood at the window with the city, arranged under his gaze like souvenirs. "You look older," he said without turning. "That's what happens when you learn your father tried to buy a woman out of your life," Lucas replied. William faced him. "I offered her options. You handed her contempt with cash in it. Cash softens contempt. It hardens pride," Lucas said. "Hers is stronger than yours." A flicker of something like regret crossed William's features and vanished. "You left the company to chase a story. Do you know what predators do when the alpha goes missing? They circle." "I'm aware," Lucas said. "I plan to break their teeth." William poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a glass and sipped. You can't fight a man like Blake with feelings. I'm not, Lucas said. I'm fighting him with a reporter. William chuckled without humor. Ah, a man with a blog. A man who understands paper trails, Lucas snapped. Not everything worth reading has gloss on it. They stood a minute, measuring the distance between their definitions of power. William set the glass down and clasped his hands behind his back. I once told you to keep your heart out of rooms where contracts were being signed, he said. It turns out I should have told you to keep it out of rooms where they were being broken. I kept it out for too long, Lucas said. It rotted in storage. Poetry, William sneered. Meanwhile, Blake is strangling the board with promises. Then fire the board. Not how governance works, William said dryly. He drew a breath, and something shifted under the sharpness. Lucas, he said, and it was the voice he used on childhood Christmas mornings before the lesson and after the wrapping paper. What if none of this is about her? What if it's about punishing me? Lucas blinked. The question hit a place he didn't know was exposed. There are easier ways to punish you, he said. And none of them laugh when the coffee's right. William stared at him, and for a second the older man looked scared of something he couldn't name. He looked down, straightened his cuffs, and when he looked up again, the fear was hidden where men like him hide everything tender. Be careful, he said. It was not permission. It was not a blessing, but it wasn't a curse either. Lucas left with the stale taste of old arguments on his tongue and drove to a place he hadn't gone in years, the scruffy soccer field under the expressway where he used to run wind sprints at dawn because motion feels like progress, even when you're not going anywhere. He stood at the fence and watched two kids kick a half-flat ball and laugh like gravity was a rumor. He wanted that sound back in his life. He wanted it so badly he could feel his ribs ache with the wanting. At 6, Henry's piece went live. No glossy cover art. Just a headline that didn't need adjectives. Inside the Blake Hale media operation to discredit Lucas Caldwell and Jasmine Porter. The subhead named the payments, the shell vendor, the memos, screenshots, dates, quotes from former employees granted anonymity because mortgages make you careful. The tone was plain on purpose. Readers online don't trust sincerity unless it looks like a spreadsheet. Within an hour, the story was trending in a different, quieter corner of the internet, the one where people read before they retweet. Lucas didn't celebrate. He called Jasmine. She answered on the second ring. I saw it, she said. And it hurt less than I thought it would, she said, a little breathless, like she'd just carried something heavy upstairs and set it down where it belonged. Come over. He didn't hesitate. He parked illegally and ignored the ticket tucked under his wiper like the city's signature on his bad habit. On the stairs, his legs felt unsteady, his body catching up to the truth his head had been sprinting toward all day. She opened the door with the envelope in her hand. This was under my mat, she said, passing him the photo. Tell me what this is. I met her to tell her to stop, he said, holding the image as if it might burn him. To say I was done with the games. I should have told you. I didn't, because I didn't want to give that meeting any weight inside our story. Did you touch her? No, he said. She touched my shoulder like victory does when it thinks it's inevitable. I didn't touch back. Jasmine searched his face, comparing it to the man in the photograph. The same jaw, the same eyes, the same posture that looked like it was built to hold burdens and show none. She believed him. The belief didn't come with fireworks. It came with the soft exhale you make when a door you were sure was locked opens under your palm. They sat at the small table with the plant that refused to die. Henry's story helps, she said, but it won't change people who want the worst version of me. Maybe not, he said. But it gives you something to point at when they lie. Us, she corrected. Us, he agreed. They ate soup Gina insisted on ladling out like there was a cold in the room. After, Lucas helped with the dishes, sleeves rolled, hands steady in hot water, a man making himself useful in a life that functioned before he arrived. When they were done, Jasmine touched his wrist. "You were about to say something on the phone," she said. "Before the piece went live." "I was going to say, I'm sorry I almost believed the wrong thing," he said quietly. "I didn't say it because I didn't want to drop that weight on you again." He swallowed. "I'm saying it now," she nodded. "Thank you. Do you forgive me?" "I forgive your fear," she said. "The rest we work on." They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Sometimes closeness is a chair pulled nearer, two bodies angled toward the same future. The future had other plans. By midnight, a counter-story launched from a glossy site with a bright logo and dull ethics. Anonymous sources confirm. Assistant turned on Caldwell. The piece cited internal emails proving Lydia had fed Tyler access out of revenge after she was cut out. It painted a picture of a woman scorned and the men who suffered her competence. It was poison dressed as an explanation. Lucas felt something twist inside him. He'd thrown Lydia out. He'd believed the documents. He'd done Tyler's job for him. He called her. It rang to voicemail. He called again. Nothing. He texted, "I was wrong. Please." "Where are you?" No response. At 2 a.m., his building's security desk called. "Sir, Ms. Jameson is here," the guard said. "She doesn't want to come up." Lucas took the elevator down to the lobby barefoot, hair a mess, shirt half-buttoned. Lydia stood by the revolving door with a canvas tote and an expression he'd never seen on her face. Not anger, not pride, empty. "I wanted to say goodbye face to face," she said. "Because I won't be at your side tomorrow when the world asks you to explain yourself again." "I was wrong," he said, the words tumbling out like coins thrown at a toll you blew past. "Henry brought me papers, and they looked like you. They were supposed to," she said. "That's what framing is. He used my access as a mask because my access had never failed you." "I failed you," he said. "You failed yourself," she replied. "I was collateral." He flinched. "Tell me how to fix it." "You don't," she said softly. "You change, and then you wait to see if the new you learns how to hold doubt without handing it a crown." She lifted the tote, half-smiled like a person does when they remember a good day after a bad year. "I backed up everything," she added. "Your drives, your deals, your receipts. I also found the thing you need to end him." "End who?" "Blake," she said, and pulled a slim folder from the bag. Inside, a contract addendum between the foundation and a high-profile city official earmarking funds that never landed where the public ledger said they did. In discreet legalese, it was bribery. In plain English, theft. "He left a shadow," Lydia said. "I followed it. You can give it to Henry or keep it as insurance. I'm going to sleep for a month." He stared at the document like it might sprout wings. "Lydia, don't," she said. "If I stay until your story is clean, I'll never leave. And if I never leave, I become the person they wrote about. I won't let them turn my loyalty into a plot device." She squeezed his arm once, the way you do with someone you love in the most unsentimental sense of the word. "Win or lose, do it without me." She walked out into a street that smelled like wet metal and bakery ovens, and the revolving door turned once, twice, then settled. Glass panels catching and releasing his reflection until it wasn't clear which side of the lobby he occupied. He took the folder to Henry at sunrise. "Can you verify?" he asked. Henry skimmed, whistled low. "I can, but this blows past celebrity gossip into civic crime. If we run it, he doesn't just lose face. He loses freedom." "He earns what he earns," Lucas said. "Just make sure we earn the truth." Henry nodded. "I'll need 2 days." "Take 1, Lucas said, and left before the fear could catch up to his authority. He went straight to Jasmine's. She opened the door like she'd been listening for his steps. He handed her a coffee and the smallest smile he could manage without breaking. "I lost Lydia," he said. "I'm sorry," she replied, and meant it. Loss is a language the poor and the rich speak with. Different accents, but the same grief. She gave me a map to the end of him, he added. Then finish it, she said. I don't know who I am after that. He confessed? Maybe that's the point, she said. Maybe you were always more than your enemies. He leaned against the counter and watched her pour coffee into the good things take time mug. He thought about that sentence. He thought about the time part most of all. They took a walk by the river as the morning cracked open. The water had that steel-blue look it gets when the day's not sure whether to be kind. They didn't hold hands at first. Then they did, without noticing the moment of change. I want to open the diner sooner than later, Jasmine said. Not after this is over. During. She looked up at him. Is that crazy? It's the opposite, he said. It's a way to build a life that isn't a reaction. They talked menus and margins, and for a handful of blocks, they traveled inside a pocket of air that the city, mercifully, chose not to puncture. When they reached the pier behind his building, the place where the memory of a torn bag and a rainstorm had become an origin story, she stopped and faced him. When this blows, she said, meaning the article, the scandal, the fire that cleans, you'll be asked to be the man you used to be. The one who wins by making other people small. Don't go back. I won't, he said, and the certainty in his voice surprised him. I don't fit in that suit anymore. He kissed her then, slow and steady, like stepping into a room you intend to stay in. The city could watch or look away. It didn't matter. The moment was not a performance. It was a quiet, private vow set to the sound of water finding the shore and taxis finding the green lights. Afternoon brought a rupture disguised as routine. Gloria called from a private number. You've made a mess, she said when he answered. And you've forced my hand. You've forced your own, he replied. Start with the envelope and work your way up. You always were good with words, she said. And there was that ache in her tone again, the kind that made cruelty sound like confession. Henry's story paints me as a villain, so I'll be one. They'll believe it's because you broke my heart. They won't look at the accounts I don't want them to see. You really think you walk away from this? He asked, amazed at the audacity that only money wrapped in fear can buy. I think the city needs women like me to be useful, she said. They'll keep me because I know where the parties are and who paid for the champagne. You mistake utility for absolution, he said. It's a common error among people who've never done their own dishes. For the first time, she laughed for real, an unpretty sound edged with panic. Do you love her? She blurted. Do you love that girl enough to let everything else drown? Yes, he said without thinking. That night, Tyler's team tried to preempt the next blow with a philanthropic initiative reveal. Glittering press release, photos of smiling interns. No one noticed, because at 8 p.m., Henry's second piece dropped like a stone into a shallow pond. Exclusive, financial irregularities tie Blake Foundation to misallocated city funds. The article named the official and included the addendum Lydia found. It was precise, quiet, devastating. Within an hour, a councilwoman tweeted about hearings. Within 2, a local station ran the headline in scrolling red. Blake released a statement blaming clerical errors. Gloria posted a photo of a sunset with a caption about new beginnings. The internet laughed and then sharpened its knives. Lucas expected a weight to lift. It didn't. Winning doesn't feel like flying when your wings are tired. It feels like stopping the fall long enough to find a ledge. He and Jasmine watched the coverage from her couch, the plant on the sill catching the last of the light like it was sipping. He'll hit back, she said. He'll try, Lucas replied. But he's out of clean hands. People like him always find new soap, she said. Then we keep our windows open, he said. And she smiled, because she knew what he meant. Let the air in. Don't hide. Build a life that survives scrutiny, because it was built with the lights on. An hour later, the building's intercom buzzed. Jasmine answered and frowned. "It's for you." "Who?" "Your father." Lucas startled, then stood. William Caldwell walked in with less thunder than usual, his coat folded over his arm, his hair carrying the humility of a man who has watched a tide change against his orders. He looked at Jasmine first and nodded. "Miss Porter." "Mr. Caldwell," she replied, cautious but polite, because dignity is a habit you keep even when you have reason to abandon it. William turned to his son. "I came to say something you'll never hear again," he said. "You were right," Lucas blinked. "About what part?" "About building something with your heart and surviving the men who want to crush it," William said. He reached into his coat and handed Lucas a folder. "Tyler tried to court me. He brought offers. He brought threats. He brought files with your worst days highlighted like scripture." William's mouth tightened. "I recorded him." Lucas opened the folder and saw a transcript. A voice labeled TB. Words that admitted strategy none of his lawyers could make palatable. "You wore a wire?" he asked, stunned. "I wore an old man's patience," William said, "and a pen that listens. You were busy being in love. I decided to be useful." Jasmine glanced between them and felt something strange open up in the middle of the room, the space where a new story might grow if the old characters allow it. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. William turned to her. "Because I thought legacy meant keeping the house standing at any cost. Turns out it means knowing when to tear down a wing that's rotting." He took a breath. It sounded like surrender, and relief shook hands in his lungs. "Also, I wanted to meet the woman who made my son more interesting than his balance sheet." Jasmine laughed, startled and genuine. "Nice to meet you," she said. "Don't make him soft," William added. "Too late," she and Lucas said at the same time. And William actually smiled, an expression that looked like it had dust on it from disuse. They planned then. Not revenge, not anymore, but closure. Henry would verify the recording. The council would compel testimony. The foundation would attempt a final, clumsy pivot. And through it all, they would hold their line. No staged moments, no theatrical rage, only facts and the kind of stubborn tenderness that survives scrutiny because it was never performative to begin with. When William left, Lucas walked him to the door. In the hallway, father and son stood under a buzzing light that turned everything a little too honest. "I was unkind to you," William said, eyes on the carpet. "For a long time." "You taught me to be unkind to myself," Lucas replied. He didn't say it cruelly. He said it like you say the weather. "Try not to teach her the same," William said, nodding toward the apartment. "I won't," Lucas said, and meant it with a certainty that didn't need volume. Back inside, Jasmine was washing 2 mugs at the sink. He slipped his arms around her waist from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder, and watched the water run clear. "We might actually make it," he said. "We're not there yet," she replied. "No," he agreed. "But we can see the sign." They stood like that a long minute. The kind of minute you remember later when the next storm pretends you've never beaten one before. Outside, sirens threaded the night. Inside, the heater clicked with the rhythm of a house making peace with itself. Near midnight, his phone vibrated with a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it. He didn't. "Hello?" A woman's voice, steady and nervous. "Mr. Caldwell? You don't know me. I was at the foundation. I recorded something. I think it belongs to you." "What is it?" he asked. "A planning meeting," she said. "The day before the mentor video. You can hear Blake. You can hear Ms. Hale. They're talking about cuts, about how to make her sound ungrateful." Her breath shook. "I can't sleep anymore. I need it out of me. Can you send it to Henry?" he asked gently. "I'll bring it to you," she said. "I don't trust files anymore." He gave her the address. When he hung up, Jasmine was watching him with that gaze that always found the point under the sentence. "People are choosing," she said. "They are," he replied. Finally. He sat on the edge of the couch and let exhaustion pour through him like a tide going out. Jasmine took his hand and laced their fingers. "When this chapter ends," she said, "let's open the diner." "With a north window," he said. "With pancakes and mercy," she added. He closed his eyes and let the picture build itself. Morning light, steam like silk, the low hymn of a room where no one is performing and everyone is hungry for the same thing. Something warm, something honest, something that tastes like yes. He slept for the first time in weeks, there on her couch, his hand in hers, the city finally lowering its voice enough for ordinary dreams to find them. And somewhere across town, a man watched his empire begin to crack in ways he couldn't fix with press releases and borrowed halos. And he realized too late that the one thing he had underestimated was the endurance of people who choose each other over noise. The recording would arrive at dawn. The hearings would be scheduled by noon. The apology would come, late and ugly, from men who didn't understand that sometimes the only currency left is the one you mint with your throat when you say, "I was wrong." And underneath it all, two people who had been turned into characters would stand up and make themselves human again. One small, stubborn, ordinary choice at a time. Because love isn't the absence of betrayal. It's the refusal to let betrayal write the ending. And they were not done writing. Not by a long shot. The recording arrived just after sunrise, carried by a woman in a thrift store pea coat, with a paper bag clutched to her chest, like it held either salvation or a bomb. Her name was Rhea. She worked nights in the Foundation's admin pool and days at a copy shop that never fixed the flicker in its front light. Her eyes kept darting to the window, as if she expected the street to bite. Lucas made coffee, Jasmine offered her the good chair, and Rhea sat on the edge like she was afraid of taking up too much of the room. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice thin. "But I couldn't keep hearing it in my head without doing something." She opened the bag with careful hands and slid out a small digital recorder wrapped in a dish towel, then a legal pad covered in tiny handwriting. "I wrote down the time codes," she added, almost apologetic. "I didn't know what would matter, so I wrote everything." They listened in the hush of a morning that hadn't decided what kind of day to be. The first voice was Tyler, easy and unhurried, the kind of voice that thinks rooms exist to catch it. "She'll need to sound like she wants out," he said. "Not angry, that's tacky. Tired. Make it noble. People donate to exhaustion when it's pretty." Papers rustled, a chair scraped. Then Gloria, cool, controlled. "We can't overcut or it'll look like a hack job," she said. "Find her lines about independence. Put those next to Caldwell's shots. Make him the weight she's shaking off." A third voice chimed in with logistics. "The director," Rhea whispered. And that voice talked budgets and impact reels and soft music cues for sympathy. At 06:14 on the pad, Tyler again. "If we catch backlash, we pivot to mentorship gone wrong. Blame the program manager. Donors love wolves in employee clothing." He laughed then, a dry tick that made Jasmine's shoulders tighten. At 09:51, Gloria lowered her voice. "If Caldwell pushes back," she said, "I have angles." A pause. "Personal angles." The room chuckled like a fireplace in a magazine. At 12:03, the director, "We'll need a signature, an NDA. The Green Blazers good at coaxing." And at 14:22, Tyler, soft as poison, almost tender. "Do it fast. Suffering has a shelf life." They stopped the recording because the silence that followed needed space. Rhea folded her hands, knuckles white. "I tried to talk to my supervisor," she said. "He said I didn't understand strategy. He said real change needs ugly steps. He said not to worry about the faces in the videos because the mission matters more than the details." She swallowed. "I started dreaming in edits. I heard my own voice with sentences I never said. I can't do it anymore." Jasmine reached across the table and touched the back of her hand, gentle. "You did the right thing," she said. Sometimes the right thing is just refusing to be a part of the wrong thing one more time. Ruiz smiled without moving her mouth. Lucas felt his chest expand with a breath he hadn't realized he was saving. Jasmine was not performing. She was testifying to the facts of her life in a room designed to confuse fact with flavor. Tyler's lawyer asked for permission to speak. Denied, then granted in a narrowly defined window that politeness framed as fairness. "Ms. Porter," he said, "do you generally distrust philanthropic efforts?" "I distrust people who consider faces expendable," she replied. "Some philanthropy heals, some launders. I was used as a wash cycle." "And your relationship with Mr. Caldwell, does it influence your resentment?" She didn't blink. "My relationship with Mr. Caldwell helps me breathe in and out while I answer questions like these." "That's what it influences?" A murmur, a gavel, a pause. Then Ruiz steered them back to the recording. "We have audio," she said, looking directly at Tyler. "We'll authenticate with our own lab. But for today, Ms. Porter, can you confirm that the voices at time code 0614 are those of Mr. Blake and Ms. Hale?" Jasmine closed her eyes for a beat to summon the moment. "Yes," she said. "That's them. You're certain?" "I remember how my stomach felt when I heard the laugh," she said. "Certainty lives in the body before it lives in the head." They dismissed her with a thank you that felt like a handshake. She walked back to the bench, legs a little watery, and sat. Lucas squeezed her knee under the ledge. He wanted to say 100 things. He said none. She leaned her shoulder into his and let a single tear slip. Not from pain, but from the relief that follows choosing the hard thing and surviving it. Next came the foundation director, pale and sweating. He tried to thread a needle with nothing on it, each sentence finding air where substance should have been. When Ruiz played a short clip, the "Make it noble" line, a flush climbed the man's neck like a siren. He asked to confer with counsel. He began to remember names. At the back, William watched without triumph. He looked tired in a way that finally matched his age. Gloria's turn was brief and surgical. She pivoted to mission, then to misunderstanding, then to regret if any harm was felt, which is the kind of regret people use when they're saving their apologies for a different room. Ruiz asked one question. "Did you at any point offer or threaten to use sensitive information about Mr. Caldwell in an attempt to influence public perception?" Gloria said no. Ruiz raised an eyebrow, then produced an email from Henry's piece, the personal angles line, red circled. Gloria smiled the way people smile when their teeth are the last defense. "That was creative language," she said. "Pitch room shorthand." "Under oath, Ms. Hale," Ruiz said. Gloria's eyes flicked to Tyler, to the director, to the ceiling like it had escape hatches. "Under oath," she repeated. "I declined to answer on the advice of counsel." It wasn't an answer. It was an admission dressed in procedure. The room knew it. The air changed. Even Tyler felt it and adjusted his posture like a man leaning into wind. When it ended, they spilled onto the steps, into a cold sun. Microphones waited like hungry mouths. Henry hovered at the edge, not shouting, waiting for eye contact that meant consent. Lucas put an arm around Jasmine and turned them away from the scrum. "Not today," he said. "Today, we eat." They walked without a destination and found a hole in the wall with a chalkboard menu that spelled everything wrong in an endearing way. They ordered too much. They ate everything. They laughed at nothing because laughter is glue and they needed all of it. Henry texted, "You were perfect. The transcript will carry weight beyond the clip. Go offline for a night if you can." Jasmine powered down her phone. Powering down felt like a ceremony. Evening fell like it always does, unbothered by headlines. Back at the apartment, Gina had taped butcher paper to the kitchen table and drawn a crude floor plan of the diner. "Entrance here," she said, pencil tapping. "Counter here, booths along the wall, a bench by the door for people waiting who don't want to admit they're waiting." She smiled. a little proud. "I've been thinking about coffee shops longer than you've been alive." They added notes. Prices, suppliers, playlists to audition, a corkboard where regulars could pin jobs and lost cat flyers and cheap rooms. "Community, not customers," Jasmine wrote at the top and circled it twice. Close to midnight, when the city had tuned itself to a lower frequency, Lucas stepped onto the fire escape and looked out over roofs that kept other people warm. He thought about the boy who'd learned to measure love in returns, the man who'd chosen ice over risk, the moment a soaked paper bag broke and handed him a different kind of story. He thought about Lydia's last look in the lobby, and his father's quiet, "Be careful," and Ria's thin hands pushing a recorder across a table. He thought about how redemption isn't a door you open once. It's a hallway of doors you keep choosing even when your arms are tired. Behind him, Jasmine slid the window up and joined him with 2 mugs. "You did good today," she said. "You did brave," he said. "Same word," she replied, handing him a mug. Steam rose, thin and silver in the streetlight. "Tomorrow?" "Permits," he said. "And maybe a sign. We need a name." She looked at the river ribboning black beyond the rooftops. "North window," she said, almost to herself. "Because that's where the light will find us no matter what the sky is doing." He let the name settle on his tongue. It tasted like a promise that didn't need varnish. "North window," he echoed. "Open soon." They stood there until the mugs cooled, shoulders touching, the city finally minding its own business for once. Somewhere downtown, Tyler stared at a notice an investigator had slid across a mahogany desk and calculated how many versions of himself he'd have to abandon to stay free. Somewhere uptown, Gloria stared at a mirror and tried to like the woman who stared back without her entourage of excuses. Somewhere midtown, Ria folded her dish towel and put the recorder in a drawer next to a candle she only lit on days she'd done something that cost her sleep. In the small apartment on the edge of a better chapter, 2 people decided that survival wasn't the goal anymore. Living was. Loving was. Building something open to the weather was. They went inside, locked the window, and left the blinds up so the morning could keep its date with the north side of the room. When they slept, it was without performances, without speeches, without any audience, but the quiet. And if the city woke mean again tomorrow, well, so be it. The coffee would still be hot. The pancakes would still be merciful. The sign would still go up. The door would still open. The first regulars would still find their way in, shaking off the cold, putting down the weight they'd carried from the street, trusting the room to hold it a while. That's how redemption works when you're lucky enough, or stubborn enough, to choose it. It isn't loud. It's breakfast. It's showing up. It's the light that keeps arriving from the north, even on the darkest days. The morning after they named the diner, the city smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Metallic, expectant, a pause stretched across blocks that needed a wash. Lucas woke before the alarm and lay still, measuring the room by sound. The hum of the refrigerator, the muted chorus of buses shifting gears, the soft scrape of Jasmine's slippers as she moved in the kitchen. He watched her through the doorway for a second, hair twisted up, sleeves shoved to her elbows, reading a permit checklist like it was a recipe card. She glanced up and caught him looking. "You're staring," she said. "I'm learning," he said. "Big difference." They walked to the empty storefront together as the sky made up its mind. The windows were still papered. Every time Jasmine peeled back a corner to peek at the street, the world felt like it was peeking back. Inside, dust motes performed a private ballet in the slant of light. He'd brought a toolbox he hadn't touched in years, and the muscle memory of a man who used to fix things for himself before he learned to pay other people to do it. She'd brought a tape measure, a notebook, a pencil behind her ear, and that quiet authority of someone who has done a job without applause for long enough that applause feels like static. They paced out the counter in the coffee station, argued gently about whether the second booth should be 2-seater or 4, compromised by sketching a 2 that could expand when the breakfast rush proved them wrong. She stood in the spot where the register would go and closed her eyes. "I want the bell to sound friendly," she said. "Not like a chore." "We'll find the right one," he promised. "Something that sounds like somebody's glad you're here." They spent the next hours in errands. The health department office was a fluorescent maze that smelled like ink and patience. A woman at the counter scanned their paperwork with that precise, compassionless efficiency you only learn by dealing with people who want to cut lines. "You're missing Form B82, she said. Jasmine reached into the folder and pulled it out, like a magician doing a trick she doesn't even smile at anymore. "We've got it," she said, voice steady. The woman raised an approving eyebrow 1 degree. "Most people don't," she said. "Most people aren't Jasmine," Lucas replied, and the woman's mouth threatened a grin before it remembered where it was. They hit a restaurant supply warehouse next, where the smell of new steel competes with the optimism of fresh plastic. They tested chairs, found the one that didn't squeak like regret, chose plates that would flatter pancakes without pretending to be art. When they argued about mugs, his love of delicate handles versus her insistence that warmth needs heft, Gina settled it with a text. "Get the ones that don't break when someone grips too hard on a bad day." They bought the sturdy kind. They took photos of paint swatches in different corners of the room to see how the north light would treat them. "This one looks like a storm thinking about forgiving," he said, of a pale blue-gray. "We'll call it Sky That Keeps Promises and pretend we invented it," she said. A delivery truck arrived with the espresso machine. He signed for it like ushering in a small, expensive piece of the future and knocked on the crate for luck. Danny showed up with 2 friends from the delivery company and exactly the right number of jokes about rich guys with calluses. They spent an hour wrestling the machine into place, while Jasmine taped a hand-lettered sign to the papered window. "Opening soon. North window. Pancakes. Mercy. Coffee." People stopped to read. A woman with a stroller pressed her palm to the glass and mouthed, "Good luck." A man in a mail carrier uniform did a thumbs up. A kid in a puffy jacket asked if Mercy cost extra and grinned when Jasmine held up 2 fingers, meaning peace. Henry called mid-afternoon with a voice that sounded like good news trying not to jinx itself. "The recording's vetted," he said. "Chain of custody tight. Council's moved hearings to next week and added 2 auditors. And there's chatter the DA's office is sniffing around Blake's books." Lucas exhaled slowly. "I don't want to celebrate on a cliff," he said. "But I'll take a handrail." Henry grunted. "You're about to get hit back," he warned. "Don't be surprised if it's personal." When systems start to crack, egos try to make it about one face. He was right faster than either of them expected. By 4, a glossy outlet ran a piece that attempted to rebrand Jasmine's testimony as performance coaching from Lucas. They clipped her sentence about breathing and reframed it as manipulation. They dredged up a photo of her at 17 with bright red hair and called it a history of reinvention, like hair dye is a felony. "They're exhausting," she said, and he kissed her temple without asking whether it would help. "Then we'll outlast." The landlord popped in at 5 with a key ring that looked like it had grown old, telling doors who was boss. "Inspection's Friday," he said. "If you pass, you can soft open Saturday. If you don't pass, I didn't say that." He held up a paper bag. "My wife sent lemon bars." "We'll name a dish after her if we live," Jasmine said. "Only if it's worthy," he replied, trying sober and failing at hiding his pride. William came by in the early evening, wearing jeans that didn't know what to do with his hips, and a sweater so new the collar still listened to instructions. He walked in, paused like a man reckoning with a foreign country, then nodded once, as if approving a change of government. "It's smaller than I thought," he said. "That's the point," Jasmine replied. He carried a toolkit of his own, polished, expensive, unused. He opened it, and then closed it, and then opened it again, as if practicing being helpful in public. "What can I do?" he asked. "Light fixtures," Lucas said. "And maybe those shelves." William looked the shelves up and down like a chess problem, then rolled up his sleeves. He worked slowly, but he worked. And when the first shelf sat level, Jasmine clapped once, and meant it. "I built a ledge," William said, wonder cracking through his old armor. "You built a place for mugs to wait," she corrected. And he looked oddly moved by the idea that objects could rest before being useful. They ate lemon bars over the counter and didn't talk about trials or transcripts or sons or fathers. Sometimes peace sneaks in disguised as sugar. It didn't last long. At 10, after they had locked up and gone home to sophisticate their exhaustion with showers and silence, someone hurled a brick through the papered window. The glass blew inward like a frozen wave, a spray of glitter that hated feet. The brick wore a note in thick marker: "Stay in your lane." Danny found it. He'd swung by to grab his forgotten hoodie and called with his voice running hot. Lucas and Jasmine drove back with their hearts in their throats and their headlights trying to turn into swords. They stood in the darkened room with their shoes crunching and looked at the ugly message like it had something to teach them. "People don't say, 'Stay in your lane,' because they believe in safety," Jasmine said. "They say it because they believe in hierarchy." "And because the lane they're in is a dead end," Lucas said. He texted Lydia, even though he'd promised himself he wouldn't bother her. "Glass smashed. You know anyone who can board us up fast?" He didn't expect an answer. It came in less than a minute. "Sending a crew in 20. Don't stand near the window." He typed and deleted 3 different versions of thank you and settled on, "I appreciate you." The crew arrived in 17 minutes. 2 women and a man who moved like they'd built half the city in the hours the city wasn't looking. They swept and measured and bolted plywood over the gap with a rhythm that sounded like competence turning fear into sawdust. One of them nodded at the sign that promised pancakes and mercy. "Make sure you save 1 plate for the people who wrote that," she said. "They'll need it sooner than you think." William showed up with a thermos and a face that looked like he'd sprinted through a memory. "You called him?" Jasmine asked. "He tracked my location," Lucas said, and William didn't deny it. "I wanted to see the whole," William said. "I can't fix what I don't look at." They stood together under the temporary patch and felt the way a room changes when it proves it can hold together, even after it's been punched. Sleep found them late and didn't stay. Morning arrived with rain that decided not to be delicate. The weather alert on her phone said gusts and flood advisories. The river looked restless from blocks away. The inspection clock didn't care. They hustled. The plumber showed up in a mood that suggested he'd been wronged by fittings in a past life. He found the leak under the sink and wrestled it into submission. The inspector came early, eyes taking in everything at once, lips pursed. "Floor drains?" he asked. "There and there," Jasmine said, pointing. 3-compartment sink? "Installed. Hot water at 180. 182, the plumber said with a pride that could finally sit down. The inspector pressed the thermometer's metal stem to another pipe, scribbled, peered at the hood, frowned at the temporary plywood. "What happened there?" "An impatient opinion," Lucas said. The inspector's frown didn't deepen or soften. "Temporary is temporary," he said. "You replace that glass within the week, or your soft open becomes a hard close." He stamped the form, the sound small and monumental. "You've got an occupancy limit. Respect it. Don't get cute with chairs." He looked at the hand-lettered sign again. "Mercy any good?" "Best thing on the menu," Jasmine said. He almost smiled. "I'll be back for a cup." By afternoon, the council announced a date for their second hearing, and the DA issued a bland statement about ongoing inquiries. Blake responded with a video in front of a wall of books whose spines had never touched his hands. He apologized to anyone who felt misled, while insisting that miscommunication and Bad actors had compromised the mission. He mentioned his humble beginnings 3 times and said, "Community, 6." The comments were split between devotion and doubt, like always. But somewhere under the bar graphs and slogans, something had shifted. You could feel it if you stood still enough. A tremor in the confidence of men who thought accountability was a rumor. Jasmine spent the late day writing a menu on butcher paper. She wrote pancakes in large letters and then smaller underneath. Buttermilk, blueberry, cornmeal lemon. She added a short paragraph. Coffee is strong. Kindness is stronger. If you're short today, say so. If you're long, leave a little. She stuck it on the wall with 2 pieces of blue tape and stepped back. Too earnest? She asked. It's a map, Lucas said. Some people never had one. They put together staff schedules. Danny would take the early dish shift and transition to runner when the first wave hit. Gina insisted on managing the counter for 3 hours as light duty, which everyone agreed to, and then privately planned to override if she looked tired. A local musician wandered in with a case and asked if they wanted Sunday mornings. Jasmine told him the room didn't know its sound yet, but would let him audition when it did. Near closing, Lydia slipped in with a box. She looked both exactly the same and unrecognizable. Hair pulled up, coat damp, eyes tired but peaceful. She set the box on the counter and opened it to reveal a tiny black POS system and a portable router. Redundancy, she said. If the main goes down, this kicks in. I also installed a camera that isn't obvious. Not to spy on customers, to record the faces that want to break windows. Jasmine exhaled. Thank you. Lucas tried a smile that didn't collapse right away. How's sleeping for a month going? I cheated, she said. After 2 days, I got bored and fixed 3 problems I wasn't hired to fix. She looked around at the room, at the shelves, at the plywood, at the sign. It's good, she said. And when Lydia says good, it's a benediction and a dare. They didn't rehire her. They didn't talk about what happened in the lobby. They let the present be present without dragging yesterday in by the hair. The rain got serious at dusk, the kind that drums and lectures. The river swelled like a muscle under skin. A city alert pushed to phones about pier closures on the west side due to wind. Deliveries may be delayed. Jasmine made a face. Our flour, she said. The supplier had offered a pier pickup for Saturday's stock because of warehouse shifts. They'll hold it till morning, Lucas said. We'll open with what we have. We'll run short by noon, she said. Opening day is not the day to tell people the pancakes are out. She looked at the rain like it had personally disrespected her. I'll go. We'll go, he corrected. They pulled on raincoats that admitted nothing and stepped into a night that didn't want to be argued with. The city around the pier was chaos in lowercase, security tape flapping, floodlights carving cones of harsh light out of the dark, a security guard gesturing commuters away from the slick boards. No civilian access, he barked over the wind. We're picking up a delivery, Jasmine shouted back. Food stock. Come back tomorrow, he said. Wine's got ideas about you. The supplier's truck idled down the pier like a stubborn promise. Through the gusts and glare, Lucas could see the pallets, paper bags with black print, yeast smiling from labels, salt in a pyramid. He could also feel the moment tightening, the setup for a scene you spend a life avoiding and find yourself walking into anyway. He took Jasmine's hand. This is dumb, he said. We can wait. It's brave, she shot back, wiping rain from her eyes. Fine line, he said. And then the wind stole his words and threw them at the river. Security relented at last, but only him. One at a time, the guard said. You, he pointed at Lucas, you can go with an escort. She stays behind the line. She runs the diner, Lucas protested. Then she should know better than to argue with physics, the guard said. Jasmine's jaw clenched. It's my name on the lease, she said. But the tape is impartial. and tape wins often enough to respect it. She nodded once, a soldier accepting the terms of a ceasefire she didn't agree with. "Go," she told Lucas. "Be fast. Don't be a hero. Be a forklift." He stepped onto the boards, the woods slick and faithful, the river heaving under planks that had seen 100 storms decide to spare them. Behind him, Jasmine stood at the line, her hair whipped into a question mark, her coat flapping like a flag that refused to pick sides. A gust shoved the rain sideways and turned the floodlights into sheets. The escort shouted instructions that were mostly drowned. Lucas lowered his head and pushed forward, counting steps, tasting salt and metal, thinking about flour and dignity like they weighed the same in a weather like this. At the truck, the driver swore and laughed and handed off a dolly and said, "You rich?" And Lucas said, "Not enough to stay dry." And they both grinned like men who understand that money doesn't do certain jobs. They loaded what they could, strapped it down sloppily because the wind didn't care about regulations, and turned back. Through the blur, he could see Jasmine at the security tape, mouth moving, hands up, arguing the air into being manageable. The guard shaking his head, other guards converging because one woman with stubborn eyes looks like a crowd when the weather's in a mood. He felt that old stupid impulse rise to run, to perform, to pretend he owned the storm by standing taller in it. He killed the impulse and concentrated on balance. Halfway back, a warning shout cut the wind, the kind of sound your body recognizes before your head assigns the meaning. A stack of plastic-wrapped crates 2 piers down broke loose and toppled. The leash of rain snapped, and everything started moving in the wrong directions. The escort grabbed Lucas's arm hard. "Hold!" he yelled. "Wait for it to pass." The dolly slid an inch and then 4. Lucas leaned into it with his whole weight, boots skidding, shoulder burning, the strap biting the web between his thumb and palm. He could hear Jasmine yelling his name like a heartbeat on the far side of a door. He kept his eyes on the lamplight beyond the tape and the figure inside it. Her, small and infuriated, and refusing to be separate from him in any way that mattered. They made the last 10 yards in a lean that could be mistaken for prayer. The guard lifted the tape and then yanked it down when the wind tried to license the opening. Lucas crossed under, laughing like a man who found gravity when he needed it. Jasmine reached for him, and security stepped between, hands up, habit and policy and insurance forming a human wall. She went still not because she wanted to, but because sometimes stillness is the only tool you have. "Let him breathe," she said, and it wasn't a plea. The guard moved. She touched Lucas's face to confirm it was still his, rain making everything look like a sad movie. "You good?" "We have flour," he said. "So, yes." She started laughing, the sound tipping into tears not because of fear, but because release needs an exit. He held her cheek with a hand that would bruise later. "North window," he said. "Open soon." The guard shook his head. "You two are idiots," he muttered, but it came out affectionate. "Go home." They got the pallets into the van and drove back through streets that had become rivers deciding against their own names. The plywood held. The roof didn't leak in any important places. They stacked what they could and left the rest on carts, like a promise for the morning shift. When they finally took off soaked coats in the apartment and peeled wet socks, the quiet was heavy and generous. Gina sat at the table with a towel and 2 mugs, and a look that said she'd been watching the window and rehearsing worst-case scenarios with a God who was tired of being negotiated with. "You're lucky I pray for fools," she said, drying Jasmine's hair like she was 6. "And for men who don't know when to put someone they love ahead of a sack of flour." "We did," Lucas said. "We came home." Gina eyed the bruised palm and nodded like she'd consider, letting him keep his self-respect. He wandered to the window with a glass of water and looked down at a city shining under streetlights and rain. Somewhere, he felt, a final card was being palmed. He was right. Tyler sat in a conference room lined with art he didn't notice, and signed a civil complaint he'd planned 3 levels ago. Defamation, tortious interference, intentional infliction. Numbers attached to injuries you can't find with a flashlight. His lawyer slid the papers back in a folder. "It won't save you," the lawyer said, maybe to himself. "It buys time." "Time builds alibis," Tyler replied. He texted Gloria a single line. "It's war or marriage, pick one." She didn't answer. She was staring at a subpoena and a mirror and trying to choose which reflection lied less. At 3 in the morning, the rain quit like a singer who knows not to push the encore. The city exhaled. He lay beside Jasmine and listened to the building hold itself together. Sleep hovered and then took him gently by the collar. In the hour before dawn, his phone buzzed twice on the nightstand. He ignored the first. The second was a message from Henry. Serve papers landed. "Don't flinch. The council is adding sworn testimony to the docket. And I have something else. Tomorrow." He put the phone face down and slid his hand across the sheet until it found the back of Jasmine's. She made that small sound she makes when she's moving between dreams. He thought about the pier floodlights and the security tape and the way her name in his mouth could outshout a storm. He thought about the brick and the plywood and the shelf William built for mugs to rest on. He thought about the inspector promising to come back for coffee. He thought about a sign that would go up in a few hours on a patched window that had already survived its first opinion. "Opening soon. North window." The city didn't know it yet, but he could feel it. Something was going to turn. Maybe not cleanly, maybe not all at once, but the hinge was there. Quiet. Oiled by 100 small choices no camera thought to record. The morning would come. Doors would open. People would step in, shaking off rain that had finally ended, looking for pancakes and a reason to believe all this noise could be replaced, if only for 20 minutes, by the mercy of being served. And just outside the frame, a man who had set a match to his own myth, and a woman who refused to be edited would look at each other like the future wasn't a threat anymore. It was a room with a north window and enough light for both of them to see. The papers came at dawn, slid under the door with the soft thump of inevitability. Lucas recognized the thickness before he saw the return address. Blake and Associates. Plaintiffs. The envelope looked expensive. Lawyers always make sure the first impression feels like intimidation. Jasmine found it when she went to get the morning paper. She stood in the half-light, hair tangled from sleep, robe tied crooked, and stared at the embossed logo like it might start talking. "He's suing us," she said quietly. Lucas came over, read the heading, Blake Foundation versus Caldwell and Porter, and let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh. "Of course he is," he said. "It's the only language he has left." They spread the pages on the kitchen table. Allegations, defamation, interference, emotional distress, damage to reputation. Damages sought, astronomical. Lucas skimmed the legalese while the coffee dripped, that steady metronome of ordinary life refusing to stop for catastrophe. "It's performative," he said. "He needs to remind the world he still matters." Jasmine traced a paragraph with her finger. "He's not just suing you," she said. "He's suing me." The word defendant next to her name looked surreal, like it belonged to a stranger who borrowed her face. She sat down slowly. "I thought I'd used up all my fear," she said. "Turns out there was more in storage." Lucas crouched in front of her chair, resting a hand on her knee. "He wants us to flinch," he said. "We won't give him that." She looked at him for a long second, then nodded. "Then let's make breakfast," she said. "No one goes to war hungry." By 8, Henry had arrived with a briefcase and a half-eaten bagel. "It's real," he confirmed, scanning the papers. "Filed in civil court, but the timing's defensive. The DA's investigation's heating up. He's trying to flip the narrative, make himself the victim before the state decides who the villains are." Lydia called 10 minutes later. "I'm already drafting a countersuit," she said. He overreached. We'll respond once the DA drops their preliminary findings. Her voice carried that familiar briskness, equal parts caffeine and justice. And Lucas? Don't talk to anyone on camera. Not yet. Let the facts finish what we started. The next few days blurred into logistics. Lawyers, filings, witness lists, deposition prep. The diner's plywood was replaced by glass. Clean, perfect, uncracked. Jasmine spent hours sanding the counter, painting trim, calibrating the espresso machine until the hiss sounded like a promise. "We open Saturday," she said one night, hands streaked with primer. "Lawsuit or not," Lucas smiled. "If we wait for the world to stop fighting us, we'll never serve a single pancake." Word spread fast. People who'd followed their story online began leaving comments like, "Rooting for North Window," and "First customer calling dibs." It wasn't unanimous support. Nothing ever is, but it was enough to tilt the air toward hope. Friday came heavy with humidity and tension. The DA's office leaked that indictments were under review. Blake appeared on television again, this time looking like contrition made flesh. "I've always sought to uplift communities," he said smoothly. "It saddens me that misunderstandings have overshadowed that mission." Gloria sat beside him, nodding like a metronome, eyes glassy. Reporters later noted her hands shaking slightly when she reached for the water glass. That night, rain threatened but didn't fall. The diner glowed from the inside, half-furnished and full of friends, Danny setting up chairs, Gina writing, "Tomorrow," on the chalkboard in looping handwriting. Lydia dropped by late, paperwork under her arm, hair damp from the mist. "You'll pass inspection again tomorrow," she said. "And you'll probably win the case, but he'll still try to drag it out. People like Blake don't know how to stop performing long enough to feel shame." She paused at the door, looking around the room. "You built something human," she said softly. "Don't let the legal noise make you forget that." They opened North Window at 7 a.m. sharp. The first customer was the mail carrier who'd once given them a thumbs up through the glass. "I don't usually eat carbs before 9, he said, sitting down. "But rules are for days without pancakes." By 8:30, the place buzzed. The smell of butter and coffee tangled with conversation. People tipped generously, as if money could be gratitude made visible. Someone brought flowers. A woman left a note under her plate. "You reminded me people can start again." Jasmine found it while clearing the table and had to turn away for a second to breathe. Lucas worked the counter, sleeves rolled, apron dusted with flour. Every time he poured coffee, he thought about the boardroom glass walls he used to hide behind. They'd shattered too, in their own way, and maybe that was mercy. He caught his father's reflection outside once, William standing by the window, pretending to read the posted menu. Lucas waved him in. "I'm just here for quality control," William said dryly, sliding into a booth. Jasmine brought him pancakes without asking his order. He took one bite, set down the fork, and said, "This is better than a merger." It was his version of affection. By afternoon, the news hit like thunder. Tyler Blake indicted on 3 counts of fraud and obstruction. The DA's press conference replayed on every screen in the diner. Reporters described the evidence trail, the falsified memos, the foundation money routed through shell charities. Gloria's name was mentioned as a cooperating witness. Jasmine turned off the sound, but not the picture. The image of Blake's perfect composure finally cracking filled the silence like music. Henry called minutes later. "It's done," he said. "The council forwarded everything to the feds. They're freezing assets. He won't have the resources to drag the civil suit much longer." Lucas thanked him, then handed the phone to Jasmine. "He wants to tell you something," he said. Henry's voice came through warm and weary. "You did the hard part, Jasmine. You kept telling the truth, even when people made it expensive. That's how history gets written right." That evening, after the last customer left and the closed sign flipped, Lucas and Jasmine sat at the counter, in the glow of the neon light they'd finally installed. "Do you feel free?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I feel unburdened," he said. "Freedom's a bigger word. Maybe that comes after we forgive ourselves for believing in the wrong people for too long." She smiled. "Then we'll open early tomorrow. Freedom loves breakfast." They closed up and walked home through quiet streets. At the intersection, a man approached, hood up, hands in pockets. Lucas tensed, but the man just held out a folded envelope. "From Gloria," he said, and walked off before they could ask questions. Inside was a single page, handwritten, trembling. "Lucas, there are things I can't undo. I thought power was permanence, but it's just a costume that stops fitting when truth starts breathing. I'm leaving the city. Don't worry, I'm not running. I'm retreating. Tell Jasmine I finally understand what you both were trying to build. Tell her I hope the coffee's as strong as she said." No signature, just the imprint of lipstick on the paper's edge. Jasmine folded it carefully and slipped it into the cash drawer at the diner the next morning. "Every story needs an epilogue," she said. Days stretched into weeks. The diner thrived, not with lines out the door or fame, but with constancy. Regulars came back. A retired teacher brought her students' poems to pin on the corkboard. A construction crew made North Window their 6 a.m. ritual. A lonely man started leaving crossword puzzles, solved halfway for someone else to finish. Jasmine filled the walls with small kindnesses and the shelves with mugs that had stories. Lucas balanced the books at night, his hands still rough from cleaning griddles, his mind calmer than it had ever been in his glass office years. He found peace in repetition, the flip of a pancake, the hiss of steam, the way every sunrise looked slightly different through the north-facing window. Then, one morning, William didn't show up for his usual coffee. He was always punctual, a creature of schedule. By noon, Lucas's phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, official. His father had collapsed at home. Massive heart failure. The words landed like stones on the countertop. Jasmine was beside him before he realized he'd gone pale. "Go," she said. "I'll close early." At the hospital, the corridors smelled like antiseptic and thyme. William lay still, machines quiet. The nurse said he'd gone quickly. On the bedside table was a folder, his handwriting on the label. For Lucas. Inside were letters, contracts, and one note that said simply, "You were right about the shelf. Things need a place to rest." The funeral was small. Business partners sent flowers. Most stayed away. Lucas spoke briefly. "My father believed success was measured in what you could build alone," he said. "I believe it's measured in what stays standing after you learn to share the weight." Afterward, he returned to the diner. Jasmine was waiting by the door, apron tied, 2 mugs ready. She didn't speak. She just poured. The silence between them was a blanket, not a wall. Spring rolled in with its forgiving light. The lawsuit was quietly withdrawn. The DA's case ended in conviction. Blake took a plea deal. Gloria's cooperation earned her community service, ironically, at a food bank. Lydia visited one last time to deliver the court's final notice. "You're clear," she said. "Officially boring again." She looked around at the morning rush. "Never thought I'd say this, but boredom looks good on you." A month later, North Window hosted a small event. The sign outside read, "Community Breakfast. Free coffee for anyone starting over." Rhea came, smiling shyly, her hair shorter, her eyes lighter. Henry showed up with a notepad he didn't use. The mail carrier brought flowers. Gina ran the register like a general commanding goodwill. Even the health inspector stopped by, ordered pancakes, and said, "You kept your promise." Lucas and Jasmine stood behind the counter, watching the room fill. He leaned toward her and whispered, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if that paper bag hadn't torn?" She laughed. "You'd still be hiding behind glass." I'd still be apologizing for taking up space. We were bound to collide eventually. When the last plate was cleared and the bell over the door jingled one final time for the night, she turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from the north window. "That light never quits," she said. "Even when we do." He took her hand, squeezed gently. "Then let's keep earning it." Outside the city hummed, still loud, still flawed, still alive. Inside, the reflection in the window showed two people who had walked through noise and come out speaking softly. No headlines, no drama, just a life that fit. The kind of ending that isn't really an ending at all, just a continuation written in smaller, steadier handwriting. And somewhere between the last sip of coffee and the first whisper of tomorrow, the city's richest former CEO and a girl who once delivered lunch to his door stood in a diner they built together and finally understood what wealth had been trying to teach them all along. It was never the money. It was the mercy. By early summer, North Window had outgrown its quiet anonymity. What began as a sanctuary for tired hearts and truck stop regulars was now on every hidden gem list in the city. The irony wasn't lost on Jasmine. They had built a place meant to be ordinary, and the world turned it into a spectacle anyway. On weekends, the line reached the corner. The chalkboard menu trended on social media every time she changed the daily quote. Mercy tastes better than bitterness. Rich or poor, everyone's coffee cools at the same speed. People photographed their mugs like trophies. A lifestyle blogger called North Window the cafe that healed New York's cynicism, which made Lucas laugh for a week. At first, the attention felt like grace. Reporters who had once torn them apart now wanted interviews. Magazine writers asked for the inside story of resilience. Lucas declined most requests politely, but some nights, after closing, Jasmine would find him at the counter scrolling through his inbox, his face caught between nostalgia and temptation. "You could tell it in your own words this time," she'd say softly, without accusation. "Maybe," he'd answer. "But I like this version better. No script, no studio lights." He'd mean it in that moment. And yet, the gleam never entirely left his eyes when opportunity knocked. One morning, a black car idled outside the diner. A man in a tailored suit came in and ordered black coffee. No sugar. When Lucas brought it over, the man smiled like someone greeting an old colleague. "Mr. Caldwell," he said. "Or do you prefer Chef now?" Lucas recognized him immediately. Martin Cole, an investor who once fought for a seat on his board. "I prefer Lucas," he said carefully. Cole looked around the diner, appraising it the way financiers appraise markets, through potential profit, not presence. "This place has heart," he said, "and heart scales. You've built something authentic. You could replicate this across the country. North Window, the name alone could carry a brand." Jasmine wiped a table nearby, listening without listening. Cole continued, "We'd handle logistics, funding, licensing. You'd be the face, the story." The reformed CEO turned community visionary. "People eat that up." Lucas sipped his coffee to buy time. "That's not why we built it," he said. Cole chuckled. "Intentions are noble, but sustainability requires ambition. You think this charm survives when the roof leaks? When health inspectors double fees? Scale, Lucas. Legacy. Don't let smallness waste your second chance." He left a business card on the counter. The name shimmered in gold foil. Jasmine saw the look in Lucas's eyes as he turned it over. Recognition, intrigue, a flicker of the man who used to see expansion as oxygen. When the door shut behind Cole, she walked over quietly. "You don't have to burn what we built just because someone called it flammable," she said. "I'm not," he replied, almost too quickly. She studied him. "You miss the chase, don't you?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I miss proving I can build something that lasts," he admitted. "You already did," she said. "It's standing right here." But he didn't look convinced. That night, after she went to bed, he sat alone in the diner, the business card propped against the sugar jar. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. He thought about scale, about legacy, about the ghosts of men like his father and Blake who mistook empire for meaning. He also thought about how the cash drawer barely balanced some weeks, how the dishwasher needed repair, how he'd dipped into savings twice that month. Authenticity didn't pay invoices. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stared at the reflection in its surface, half light, half shadow. The next morning, he called Cole. The meeting happened 2 days later at a penthouse office overlooking the river, the kind of view that used to make Lucas feel invincible. The walls were glass, of course. Everything in that world was glass, transparent enough to impress, opaque enough to hide behind. Cole pitched fast and smooth. "We'll franchise carefully," he said. "Maintain the narrative. Small-scale charm meets big-picture conscience. You'll oversee creative direction. We'll handle operations. Imagine 10, 20 north windows across America, each one serving comfort with purpose." Lucas listened, arms folded. He could feel his pulse quicken, the old rhythm returning, the thrill of expansion tapping at his ribs. But then he imagined the line cooks, the morning regulars, Jasmine at the register, the smell of pancakes that actually belonged to the hands that made them. Cole's voice faded into background noise. "I'll think about it," Lucas said finally, standing up. On the elevator ride down, he felt both heavier and lighter. The city outside looked different, familiar yet distant, like a language he'd once been fluent in, but hadn't spoken in years. When he got home, Jasmine was waiting on the couch, laptop open. "You met him," she said. "I did. And?" "I said I'd think about it." She closed the laptop slowly. "And will you?" He looked at her, then at the framed photo on the wall. A candid from opening day, flower on her cheek, sunlight spilling through the north window. "No," he said finally. "If we start franchising Mercy, it stops being Mercy." She smiled faintly. "Good. I was about to hide your phone." They laughed, the kind of laugh that ends an argument before it starts. But under the humor, something unspoken lingered. Lucas had faced the temptation once. Could he resist it forever? 2 weeks later, a journalist from the Chronicle emailed. "We'd love to profile your journey," she wrote. "Not the scandal, the recovery. The public needs stories about people who rebuild with integrity." Jasmine read the message over his shoulder. "If it helps the diner, maybe it's worth it," she said. He hesitated, then agreed. The reporter, Claire Bishop, arrived one humid afternoon with a small camera crew. She was young, sharp-eyed, and disarmingly genuine. "I'm not here to sensationalize," she said. "I'm here to listen." The interview began well. Questions about lessons learned, life after wealth, finding meaning in small things. Lucas spoke thoughtfully, almost cautiously. But then Claire turned to Jasmine. "Do you ever worry he'll go back?" Jasmine blinked. "Go back? To that life? To the chase? To power?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Jasmine smiled politely, the kind of smile that buys time. "I don't worry about where he's been," she said. "I focus on where we're standing." The answer satisfied the cameras, but not Lucas. After they left, he said, "You didn't have to protect me." "I wasn't," she said. "I was protecting us." The segment aired a week later. It was kind, balanced, even beautiful. Shots of the diner, the customers, the laughter. But one line took on a life of its own. "I focus on where we're standing." People quoted it, painted it on murals, printed it on tote bags. North Window became not just a diner, but a metaphor. With fame came flood. Offers for partnerships, sponsorships, speaking gigs. A talk show host called. A cereal brand wanted to collaborate. Jasmine watched Lucas turn down some, stall others. "You don't have to be a monk," she said once. "But don't trade silence for noise," he nodded. "Noise built my first empire. I'd rather this one hum." Still, the hum sometimes grew loud. The diner filled daily. Wait times stretched. A second location, once unthinkable, became a practical discussion. Danny offered to manage it. "You could keep the soul," he said. "Just double the chairs." They debated for weeks. Finally, they decided to test it. One more north window in a quiet town upstate. No marketing blitz, no investors. Just word of mouth. Lucas handled permits. Jasmine trained staff personally. "If it stops feeling like us," she warned, "we pull the plug." Opening day went smoothly. Locals showed up curious and left converted. Lucas smiled, watching the young manager, a single mother named Rosa, pour coffee with the same care Jasmine had taught her. "It's working," he said. "We're spreading kindness." Jasmine nodded, though something in her chest tightened. Success was a beautiful addiction. Then one night, 2 weeks later, she found Lucas on the phone, pacing. His tone was calm but urgent, the kind of cadence she'd heard back when his name was synonymous with empire. "I'm not saying yes yet," he said into the receiver. "I'm saying we can scale consciously, keep the integrity, keep the story." When he hung up, she asked quietly, "Who was that?" He hesitated. "Cole." She felt her stomach sink. "You promised." "I didn't promise never to dream," he said. She turned away, pressing her palm to the counter to steady herself. "Dreams are fine," she whispered. "But don't turn us into a brand again." That night, they slept back to back for the first time in months. The silence between them was thick. Not angry, just uncertain. Days passed. Routines returned. And yet a quiet tension hummed beneath everything. Then came the surprise that changed everything. Jasmine missed her period. She took the test alone, sitting on the bathroom floor, heart pounding. Positive. She stared at the 2 pink lines like they were another kind of lawsuit, life demanding a response. When Lucas came home that night, she handed him the test silently. He looked at it, then at her. "You're serious?" She nodded. "I am," he laughed, a single incredulous sound, and pulled her into his arms. "We're going to have a kid," he whispered. "A family." For the next few weeks, the world shrank to preparation. Doctor visits, plans, arguments about cribs and paint colors. The diner buzzed along, steady and warm. Lucas refused Cole's calls completely. "We build one thing at a time," he told Jasmine. This time, it's a life. When she was 6 months along, the Chronicle ran a follow-up piece, The North Window Legacy. It featured photos of the diner and a single line from Lucas. "We're not chasing growth. We're learning grace." The article went viral. Again. But this time it felt different. Gentler. Less about spectacle. More about what endurance looks like when it finally stops running. Late one evening, as thunder rolled in the distance, Jasmine sat at the counter, hand resting on her stomach. Lucas was wiping tables. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly. He looked up. "Miss what?" "The noise. The power. The way people used to look at you like you owned gravity." He thought about it honestly. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember what it cost. I traded sleep for applause and love for control. Now I trade attention for peace. Feels like profit to me," she smiled, reaching out her hand. He took it. "Then let's keep the lights low," she said. "Let the world eat somewhere else for a while." Outside, rain began to fall, not angry, just cleansing. Inside, the north window glowed softly, reflecting 2 people who had finally learned the hardest lesson success ever teaches. It means nothing if you can't rest inside it. They closed early that night, locked the door, and left the chairs unstacked for morning light to find. In the corner of the counter sat Cole's gold business card, still untouched, its letters fading slightly with time. Lucas picked it up, looked at it one last time, and dropped it into the trash. "Legacy," he said quietly. "Doesn't need a logo." And in that moment, the hum of the city outside seemed to agree. Autumn arrived the way forgiveness does, quietly, without demanding to be noticed. The leaves turned first in the park across from the diner, a slow burn of gold that crept into the reflection of the north-facing window. Customers started asking for cider instead of lemonade. The smell of cinnamon joined the morning steam. Every change felt small, domestic, eternal. Jasmine's belly had grown round and steady. She moved slower now, but her laughter filled the room faster than ever. Lucas had learned to hover without smothering. He wiped counters, carried crates, fetched stools when she refused to sit. Every now and then, she'd catch him watching her like a man memorizing peace. "Stop staring," she'd say. "You're making me self-conscious." "Just making sure the universe doesn't take back what it gave me," he'd answer, and she'd roll her eyes, hiding the smile that followed. The diner ran itself these days. Danny handled the early shift. Gina took afternoons. Lydia stopped by on Sundays, declaring herself quality assurance for the pancakes. The second north window upstate was steady too. Rosa sent weekly texts full of photos. A couple's anniversary breakfast, kids scribbling in coloring books, someone proposing at table 6. Every image looked like a small prayer answered. They'd done it. They'd built something that stayed kind even when no one was watching. But peace never meant stillness. As Jasmine's due date crept closer, the city's pulse seemed to sync with hers. Traffic softer, nights longer, every sound like anticipation. Lucas found himself awake at strange hours, standing by the window, counting her breaths as she slept. He'd spent years calculating profit margins. Now he calculated gratitude in heartbeats. Sometimes he'd whisper to the unborn child, a quiet monologue about pancakes and second chances. "You're coming into a world that already tried to break us," he'd murmur. "But we built a corner that holds." One late night, rain tapping the roof like fingers on glass, she woke with a sharp inhale. "Lucas," she whispered, hand on her stomach. "It's time." The world shifted into motion before his brain did. He grabbed the hospital bag, keys, coat, everything except composure. The drive was a blur of wet roads and red lights that seemed to understand urgency. In the delivery room, he held her hand through contractions that looked like storms in miniature. She cursed once, then laughed mid-pain. "Don't you dare faint," she warned. "Not planning to," he lied. Hours stretched, time folding in on itself. And then, at dawn, the world exhaled. The baby's cry cut through the sterile quiet, high and fierce and alive. A girl, small, red-faced, indignant at the very idea of beginnings. Jasmine wept silently. Lucas couldn't speak. The nurse placed the child in her arms, and the sight rearranged him completely. He'd thought success was expansion. He'd thought love was adrenaline. But this tiny heartbeat pressed against another, was the richest silence he'd ever known. They named her Grace, not for religion, but for what had saved them. News of the birth traveled fast through the diner family. Lydia sent flowers before noon. Danny taped a handwritten sign to the door. "Out serving life. Be back Monday." Regulars left notes under the mat, crayon hearts, folded dollar bills, a single pancake recipe from an old woman titled, "For Grace, when she's tall enough to reach the counter." The first week home felt like a dream stitched with exhaustion. Nights bled into mornings. Jasmine learned to sleep sitting up. Lucas learned that lullabies don't need rhythm, only sincerity. Sometimes they'd bring Grace to the diner, her bassinet tucked behind the counter. Customers lowered their voices instinctively, as if reverence belonged to every newborn. One morning, a television crew appeared unannounced, cameras already rolling. "We're doing a feel-good follow-up," the reporter said brightly. "The community wants to see the baby of North Window." Jasmine froze. Lucas stepped forward. "No cameras today," he said, calm but firm. The reporter persisted. "Just a few shots. You've inspired so many people." Lucas shook his head. Then let's inspire them to know when to stop filming. The crew hesitated, then retreated. When the door closed, Jasmine exhaled. You didn't lose your temper, she said softly. I didn't need to, he replied. Some boundaries explain themselves. Weeks became months. The lawsuit disappeared into archives. Blake faded from headlines. Gloria wrote once more. A postcard from a coastal town, simply saying, still learning to breathe different air. Lucas pinned it on the corkboard behind the counter. Everyone deserves a north window, he told Jasmine. Winter came early. The diner glowed against the gray like a hearth. Grace grew fast, wide-eyed, endlessly curious. Her first laugh happened during a breakfast rush. A customer dropped a fork, startled, then grinned. That sound, he said, belongs on the menu. They wrote Grace's giggle, free with every coffee on the board that day, and it stayed there through February, on their first Christmas as parents. Lucas closed the diner for the entire day. They spent it cooking badly in their apartment, burning half the cookies, singing off-key. He handed Jasmine a small box, not jewelry, but a keychain shaped like a window. To remind you, he said, even when we're away from the diner, there's always a view worth keeping. She teared up, of course. You're getting sentimental in your old age, she said. I've been sentimental since the first paper bag you dropped, he replied. By spring, Grace was walking, a wobbly miracle leaving fingerprints on every surface. Lucas had built a playpen in the corner of the diner, right next to the window. Customers stopped to wave at her. She waved back like royalty. Jasmine began writing again, small essays for a local paper about life, motherhood, and pancakes. Her words carried that same quiet defiance. Soft, but unshakable. One column went viral. The headline read, Kindness isn't a business model. It's a survival strategy. She read it aloud to Lucas one night. When she finished, he said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, You're the best writer I've ever known. She laughed. Says the man who once wrote memos that made interns cry. They sat together on the couch, Grace asleep between them, the city lights painting moving constellations on the wall. Do you ever think about what's next? She asked. Not like I used to, he said. Back then, next meant bigger. Now it just means tomorrow morning. But what if tomorrow wants more from us? He smiled. Then we'll feed it breakfast first. Time did what it always does, it moved. Grace started preschool. The second diner thrived quietly. Lucas taught Danny bookkeeping, preparing to hand him partial ownership. Legacy should circulate, he said. Not stagnate. Lydia finally retired to Maine, sending postcards of lighthouses with captions like, still level, still standing. Gina's health improved. She claimed it was from the pancakes, though the doctors credited medication. And then, one late afternoon, nearly 5 years after the first north window opened, Lucas stood by the door and realized something. The diner could run without him. The staff knew the rhythm. The customers carried the story. The place no longer needed its founders to validate it. He told Jasmine that night. We could take a break, he said. Travel a little. Show Grace the ocean she's only seen in picture books. She hesitated, then smiled. You're serious? Dead serious. We'll come back. The window will wait. They packed light and left in early summer. Grace squealed at her first sight of the Atlantic. Endless, loud, alive. Lucas built sandcastles with her while Jasmine took pictures. He'd once owned skyscrapers, and yet nothing felt as solid as a child's laughter mixing with waves. One evening, as the sun folded into the horizon, Jasmine asked him to promise something. If she grows up and wants to chase the world, don't stop her. He looked at her, sand on his hands, light in his eyes. I won't, he said, but I'll make sure she knows where home is. When they returned to the city weeks later, the diner looked the same, chairs stacked, windows clean, signs slightly faded. But inside, something felt different. It wasn't emptiness. It was continuity. Life had moved forward without them, and that was exactly what success was supposed to mean. Danny handed them the ledger, proud. "We made more this month than any before," he said. "But we still comped every coffee for the shelter workers." Lucas grinned. "That's the right kind of profit." That night, after closing, Jasmine flipped the sign to closed and leaned against the counter. Grace slept in the stroller nearby. "Do you ever miss the old world?" she asked softly. Lucas looked around the diner. The shelves his father once leveled, the bell that rang like welcome instead of alarm, the faint smell of maple that clung to everything. "No," he said. "The old world never knew what peace tasted like." She nodded. "Then we're rich." He reached for her hand, their fingers fitting like muscle memory. "We've been rich for a long time," he said. "We just had to lose everything to count it right." Outside, the city hummed its endless song. Inside, North Window stood still, holding the warmth of every morning that had come before and everyone yet to arrive. The glass caught the reflection of 3 figures, 2 adults, 1 small child, bathed in the golden spill of the streetlight. Jasmine whispered, "It's strange, isn't it? All that noise we survived just to end up here." Lucas smiled. "It's not strange," he said. "It's symmetry." She looked at him, the diner, their daughter, and the infinite world beyond the window. "Then let's keep earning it," she said again. The same words she'd spoken years ago when mercy was still a risk. And there, beneath the soft hum of the refrigerators and the city's distant heartbeat, the story came full circle. A former millionaire who thought success meant domination. A delivery girl who taught him that love is just service without a paycheck. A diner that turned survival into sanctuary. They didn't build an empire. They built a life. And in the quiet glow of the north-facing glass, as the city drifted toward sleep, the last thing you could see was their reflection, smiling, steady, and free. Proof that sometimes, when the world calls you foolish for choosing smallness, you end up finding everything big that actually matters. Because mercy, like morning light, always returns through the same window.